Welcome back to Haunted Fears. Arizona's small towns hide secrets that keep locals awake at night, checking their locks twice, wondering what's out there in the darkness. Tonight, I'm bringing you 11 encounters from places you've probably driven through, without a second thought. Places where something went terribly wrong. These experiences left real people too terrified to ever return home. Before we begin, hit that subscribe button and join the Haunted Fears horror family, because what you're about to hear will stay with you long after this video ends. Let's dive into the shadows. I stopped locking my doors 3 weeks ago because I realized it didn't matter. Whoever was getting in didn't need a key. My name is Brennan, and I'm a night shift nurse at the regional hospital in Show Low, about 20 miles from my home in Snowflake, Arizona. The first time it happened, I thought I was losing my mind. I'd been working nights for 6 years, always the same schedule, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., Monday through Friday. My routine was precise, almost ritualistic. I'd pull into my gravel driveway at exactly 6:47 a.m., the sun just starting to paint the desert sky in shades of pink and orange. My farmhouse sat alone on 5 acres, the nearest neighbor a good mile and a half down the road. I loved the isolation, or at least I used to. That first morning was a Tuesday in late September. The heat had finally broken, and the air carried that crisp quality that only Arizona mornings have. I remember feeling grateful for the cool breeze as I walked up my porch steps, keys jingling in my hand. The door was locked, just as I'd left it. I stepped inside, dropped my bag on the kitchen counter, and that's when I noticed it. My coffee maker was on. Not just on. There was a fresh pot waiting, still hot, steam rising from the carafe. I stood there staring at it, my brain trying to make sense of what I was seeing. I lived alone. I'd been at work all night. I didn't have a programmable coffee maker. It was an old model, the kind you had to manually turn on. I checked every room, every closet, every possible hiding spot. Nothing. No signs of forced entry, no missing items, nothing out of place except that damn coffee pot. I convinced myself I must have left it on before work and just forgotten. 12-hour shifts will do that to you. But I knew, even then, that I was lying to myself. I never made coffee before my shifts. Never. The second incident happened 3 days later. I came home to find my living room furniture rearranged. Not drastically, just subtle changes. The couch had been moved about 2 feet to the left. The coffee table was rotated 90 degrees. The throw pillows were arranged in a pattern I'd never use. Again, the doors were locked. Again, nothing was missing. This time, I called the police. The deputy who responded was young, maybe 25, and I could see the skepticism in his eyes as he walked through my house. "Sir, there's no sign of forced entry. Are you sure you didn't move these things yourself and forget? Night shift work can mess with your memory." I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to grab him by his uniform and make him understand that I wasn't some confused person who couldn't remember arranging my own furniture. But I just nodded and thanked him for coming. After he left, I installed cameras. 3 of them, 1 covering the front door, 1 in the living room, 1 in the kitchen. I also changed all my locks and installed deadbolts. That night at work, I couldn't concentrate. I kept checking my phone, monitoring the camera feeds. Everything looked normal. My empty house, exactly as I'd left it. When I got home the next morning, I knew something was wrong before I even opened the door. I could feel it, that primal instinct that tells you you're not alone even when you can't see anyone. The door was locked. I stood on my porch for a full minute watching the feed from my cameras on my phone. Nothing. No movement, no anomalies. I went inside. The smell hit me first, cologne, the expensive one I saved for special occasions, heavy in the air. Then I saw it. My bedroom door, which I always kept open, was closed. I approached it slowly, my heart hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. I pushed the door open. My bed was made. Not just made. It was made perfectly. Hospital corners and all, something I never did. and on my pillow was a single long-stemmed rose. I ran. I didn't grab my phone, didn't lock the door behind me, just ran to my car and drove straight back to town. I stayed in a motel for 3 days, working my shifts and spending my days in public places, too terrified to go home. When I finally went back, accompanied by my brother and the same deputy who'd responded before, I checked my camera footage. What I saw made my blood turn to ice. At 7:23 a.m., exactly 36 minutes after I'd left for the motel, my front door opened. But here's the thing. It didn't swing open like someone had pushed it. It didn't show any sign of being unlocked or forced. One frame it was closed, the next frame it was open. Like a glitch in the footage, except it wasn't a glitch. For the next 7 frames, just over 2 seconds of footage, there was nothing. An open door and my empty living room. Then, in frame 8, the door was closed again, locked. The deputy tried to explain it as a technical malfunction. My brother suggested someone had hacked my cameras. But I knew what I'd seen, or rather, what I hadn't seen. The incidents continued, but they escalated. I'd come home to find my toothbrush wet, like someone had just used it. My shower would be damp, the mirror still fogged. Once, I found a plate in my sink with fresh crumbs from the bread I'd bought the day before. Food would go missing from my refrigerator, not all at once, but gradually. A few slices of cheese here, half a carton of milk there. The cameras never showed anything. Hours and hours of footage of my empty house, and then these small changes that appeared between frames, impossibly fast, as if whatever was doing this existed in the spaces between seconds. I started staying awake during the day, forcing myself to remain conscious despite the exhaustion from working nights. I'd sit in my living room with a baseball bat across my lap, watching, waiting. Nothing ever happened when I was there. It was only when I slept, or when I was at work, that things changed. The worst part wasn't the violations of my space. It was the realization that whoever, or whatever, was doing this knew my schedule perfectly. They knew when I worked, when I slept, when I'd be vulnerable. They'd been watching me long enough to learn my patterns, my habits, my routines. 2 weeks ago, I woke up in my bed to find someone had been lying next to me while I slept. The sheets on the other side were warm, the pillow indented. There was a single long black hair on the pillowcase, too long to be mine, which was short and brown. I didn't sleep for 3 days after that. I went back to the police. This time they took me more seriously, especially after I showed them the hair, which I'd carefully preserved in a plastic bag. They sent it to a lab. The results came back yesterday. The hair was human, but the DNA didn't match anyone in their database. More disturbing, the hair itself was wrong. The lab technician told me it had structural anomalies they couldn't explain, cellular degradation patterns that didn't match anything living. I've stopped trying to keep them out. The locks don't work. The cameras don't show anything useful. Whatever is sharing my house with me exists in a way I can't perceive, can't record, can't stop. It's there in the gaps, in the moments between moments, in the blind spots of my awareness. Last night, I came home to find a note on my kitchen counter. Just 2 words, written in handwriting I didn't recognize. Soon, Brennan. It knows my name. It's been in my house, touching my things, lying in my bed, watching me sleep, and now it's leaving me messages. The note is the first time it's directly communicated with me, and somehow that's more terrifying than all the other incidents combined, because it means whatever this is, it's not just mindlessly invading my space. It's intelligent, it's patient, and it's been building up to something. I don't know what happens next. I don't know what it wants, but I know I can't leave. I've tried. I made it as far as Phoenix before. I felt this overwhelming compulsion to turn back. Not fear, compulsion, like invisible strings pulling me home. When I got back, there was another note. Good boy. My brother wants me to see a psychiatrist. My coworkers have noticed I'm jumpy, distracted. The deputy suggested I might be experiencing a breakdown from the stress of working nights. But I know what's real. I know something is in my house, something that can move through locked doors, something that doesn't show up on cameras, something that has developed what I can only describe as an attachment to me. I still go to work. I still come home. What else can I do? But now, when I pull into my driveway at 6:47 a.m., I don't wonder if it's been there while I was gone. I know it has. I don't wonder what it wants from me. I'm starting to understand. It's been preparing me, conditioning me, getting me used to its presence. The coffee it makes is always perfect, exactly how I like it. The furniture arrangements have grown on me. They're actually better than how I had things. The bed is always made when I wake up, even though I fall asleep in tangled sheets. In some sick way, it's taking care of me, like it's practicing, like it's learning how to be what I need. Last night was different. I felt it. Not saw, not heard, felt. I woke up at 3 p.m. during what should have been my deep sleep, and I knew with absolute certainty that I wasn't alone in my room. The air was heavy, charged, like the pressure before a monsoon. I couldn't move. Not paralysis exactly, but a complete absence of will. And then I felt it. A touch on my face, gentle, almost tender. Fingers tracing my cheekbone, brushing my hair back from my forehead. I should have been terrified. Part of me was. But another part, a part that scares me more than anything else, felt something else, comfort. Like whatever this thing is, it's been here so long that it's become familiar. That's what it wants, I think. Not to scare me, not to hurt me. It wants me to accept it, to welcome it, to make room for it in my life until I can't remember what it was like before it was here. I'm writing this during my break at work, sitting in the break room under fluorescent lights, surrounded by normal people doing normal things. In a few hours, I'll drive home. The sun will be rising. My house will be waiting, and so will it. I stopped locking my doors because locks don't work on something that doesn't need doors. I stopped checking the cameras because I know they won't show me what I'm looking for. I stopped calling the police because there's nothing they can do about something that exists in the margins of reality. Tomorrow morning, I'll make my own coffee for the first time in weeks. I need to know if it will let me. I need to know if I still have that much control over my own life. Because if I don't, if it's already taken that from me, then I need to face what that means. Part of me doesn't want to know. Part of me wants to just accept the coffee it makes, sleep in the bed it prepares, live in the house it arranges. That part grows louder every day, and that's how I know I'm running out of time, because soon that part will be louder than my own voice. And when that happens, I won't be Brennan anymore. I'll be whatever it's been molding me into, one perfect coffee pot at a time. If you're listening to this, if you're hearing my story, take it as a warning. Pay attention to the small things, the subtle changes, the impossible coincidences, because by the time you realize something is wrong, it might already be too late. It might have already made itself at home. And the worst part is, you might not even want it to leave. If you've experienced anything like this, or if you know someone who has, don't ignore it. And if you want to hear more stories like mine, subscribe to Haunted Fears and join our horror family. Because sometimes the scariest thing isn't the unknown. It's realizing you're not alone when you thought you were. The worst part wasn't the darkness when my headlamp died. It was realizing I could still hear breathing that wasn't mine. My name is Cassius, and I'm an urban explorer who documents abandoned places across Arizona for my YouTube channel. I'd heard about the old copper mines in Clifton for years. The town itself is a relic, clinging to the sides of mountains, built on the bones of its mining past. Most of the shafts had been officially sealed in the 80s, after a series of accidents that the company never fully explained. But like most sealed mines, if you knew where to look, you could find a way in. And I always knew where to look. It was early March when I made the drive from Tucson. The weather was perfect. Cool enough that I wouldn't overheat underground, but not so cold that I'd need extra layers. I'd done my research, spent weeks on mining forums and historical archives, piecing together maps of the tunnel systems. I'd found references to something called the East Extension, a section that had been dug in 1952 and abruptly abandoned just 3 weeks later. No explanation in the records, just a notation. Operation ceased, shaft sealed. That kind of mystery was exactly what I looked for. I found the entrance around noon, hidden behind a collapse of rock and desert scrub about 2 miles from the main road. Someone had been here before. The rocks had been moved aside just enough to create a gap, maybe 3 feet wide. Fresh scuff marks in the dirt. Recent. Within the last few days, I'd guess. I should have turned back then, but I didn't become successful by playing it safe. I squeezed through the gap, my backpack scraping against stone, and found myself in a horizontal shaft that extended into absolute darkness. The air was different immediately, cooler, damp, with a metallic taste that coated my tongue. My headlamp cut through the black, illuminating old wooden support beams and rusted rail tracks that disappeared into the depths. I started recording. All right, guys. We're inside what I believe is the east extension of the Morenci Clifton Mining Complex. This section hasn't been entered officially since 1952. Let's see what they left behind. The shaft descended at a gradual angle, maybe 15 degrees. Not steep enough to be dangerous, but enough that I knew getting back out would be a climb. The walls were rough-cut rock, dark copper ore veining through the stone like frozen lightning. Every 50 feet or so, I'd pass alcoves cut into the walls, rest stations where miners would have taken breaks, stored equipment, maybe eaten lunch in the dark. About 300 yards in, I found the first artifact. A lunch pail, old-style metal, sitting in one of the alcoves. I picked it up, opened it. Inside was a sandwich, wrapped in wax paper. But the sandwich was wrong. The bread wasn't moldy or decomposed. It was fresh, soft, like someone had made it that morning. I set it down carefully, my heart rate picking up. Okay, that's weird. Really weird. This mine's been sealed for 70 years, but this sandwich looks like it was made today. I kept moving, but something had changed. The mine felt different now. The darkness seemed heavier, pressing against the edges of my light. I passed more alcoves, more lunch pails, all of them containing fresh food, fresh coffee and thermoses still warm, work gloves that weren't stiff with age but supple, recently worn. The shaft opened into a larger chamber, maybe 40 feet across. This was a work area, pickaxes leaning against walls, handcarts sitting on the rails, even a jacket hanging from a hook driven into the rock. Everything looked ready for a shift to start, except there was dust on everything. Not thick, but present. A fine coating that suggested weeks, maybe months, of stillness. But the food was fresh. The coffee was warm. Someone had been here. Recently. Maybe was still here. Hello? My voice echoed weirdly in the chamber, bouncing back wrong, like the sound was bending around corners that shouldn't exist. Is anyone down here? The echo faded. Silence pressed back in. And then I heard it. Breathing. Not loud, not close, but definitely breathing. Slow, steady, somewhere deeper in the mine. Hey, I'm not with the mining company or the cops, just an explorer. Are you okay? The breathing didn't stop, didn't change, just continued that slow, steady rhythm. I should have left. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to turn around and climb back to the surface. But I was already thinking about the video, about how many views a rescue story would get, about finding whoever was down here and being the hero. I followed the sound. The chamber had 3 exits, 2 horizontal shafts and one that descended steeply. The breathing was coming from the steep one. I aimed my headlamp down into it. The shaft dropped at maybe 60 degrees, old wooden ladders bolted to the walls. I could see maybe 40 feet down before the darkness swallowed everything. I started climbing down. The ladder was old but solid. Someone had maintained it, replaced rotten rungs, reinforced the supports. Recent work. The wood was too clean, too strong. Every 20 feet there'd be a small platform, just big enough to stand on and rest before continuing down. At the third platform, I found the photographs. They were pinned to the rock wall with rusty nails. Old photographs, black and white, edges worn. They showed miners posing at this very spot. Except the dates written on the backs were impossible. 1952, 1953, 1954. The mine had been sealed in 1952. These photos shouldn't exist, but what really made my skin crawl was that I recognized the faces. Not all of them, but some. I'd seen these same faces in the historical photos I'd researched. Miners who died in the accidents that closed this section. Dead men posing for pictures years after their deaths. The breathing was louder now, close. Maybe one more ladder section down. My headlamp flickered. Just once, but it was enough to make my stomach drop. The battery was fresh. I checked it before entering. It shouldn't be flickering. I continued down. The fourth ladder. The fifth. The shaft kept going, deeper than any map had indicated, deeper than should have been possible. I'd descended maybe 200 feet from the main chamber. I was well below the level where the mining company would have stopped. The ore quality diminishes past certain depths. It wasn't economically viable to dig this far. But someone had. And someone was down here, the sixth platform. The photographs here were recent. Color photos, modern. They showed people I didn't recognize. Men and women in regular clothes, not mining gear, standing in this shaft, smiling at the camera. Tourist photos, exploration photos, like mine. Except every single person in these photos was standing in the exact same spot, the exact same pose. And in the background of each photo, barely visible in the shadows, was a figure. Tall, thin, wrong somehow. Watching. My headlamp flickered again, held, then died. Complete darkness. The kind of darkness that doesn't exist on the surface. No ambient light, no stars, no moon. Just absolute suffocating black. And I could still hear breathing, right below me, maybe 10 feet away. I fumbled for my backup flashlight, hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped it into the void. Found it, clicked it on. The beam illuminated the shaft below me. One more ladder section, ending at a final platform. And on that platform was a pile of belongings. Backpacks, cameras, phones, wallets, dozens of them, maybe more. All arranged neatly like someone had been collecting them. The breathing was coming from under the platform. I know what you're thinking. Why didn't I run? Why didn't I climb back up right then? I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But I was frozen. Not fear, not exactly. It was like my body had stopped obeying me. Like something else was making the decisions now. I climbed down the final ladder. My backup flashlight flickered as I reached the bottom platform. I swept the beam across the belongings. Recent stuff. A phone with a cracked screen couldn't have been more than 2 years old. A GoPro camera with a memory card still inside. A wallet with fresh credit cards. The breathing stopped. The silence was worse. I bent down, shining my light under the platform, into the space where the breathing had been coming from. There was a gap there, maybe 3 feet high, extending back into the rock, a crawl space. And in that crawl space, I saw them. Eyes. Dozens of them. Hundreds, maybe. All reflecting my light like animals on a road. But they weren't arranged right. Too many for any single creature. Too scattered. Like they belonged to multiple bodies pressed together in that tiny space, overlapping, tangled. And then they moved. All at once. Toward me. I ran. Or tried to. My legs were led. My body was screaming, but I forced myself to move. I grabbed the ladder and started climbing. Behind me, I heard it coming out. Not footsteps. Something else. Dragging. Wet sounds. Multiple things moving in coordination. My flashlight died. I climbed in complete darkness, hands finding rungs by memory and desperation. I could hear it below me, following, climbing, Fast, too fast. The ladder shook with its weight. Weights, plural. Multiple things using the same ladder, moving together like a single organism. I don't know how I found the main chamber. I don't remember climbing the last ladder, but suddenly I was running through the horizontal shaft, back toward the entrance, my phone in my hand now, its screen providing the only light. Behind me, the sounds got louder, closer. Not just one set of footsteps anymore, but many. A crowd moving through the shaft with impossible synchronization. The entrance. I could see daylight. That tiny gap in the rocks. Sunlight streaming through like salvation. I squeezed through. The scraping sounds were right behind me now. So close I could feel air movement against my neck. I pushed through the gap, tearing my jacket, scraping my arms raw, and tumbled out onto the desert floor. I scrambled back, pulling rocks across the entrance, blocking it. My phone was still on, still recording. I pointed it at the gap, hands shaking so badly the image was almost useless. For just a moment before I finished blocking the entrance, I saw them in the darkness beyond. Faces. Human faces. Dozens of them, pressed together, overlapping, moving as one mass. And every single face was smiling. I sealed the entrance completely, piled every rock I could move across that gap. Then I ran to my car and drove. I didn't stop until I reached Tucson. That was 6 weeks ago. I tried to review the footage when I got home. The memory card was corrupted, every single file, except one photo, taken automatically by my camera when I first entered the mine. It shows the first chamber, the one with all the work equipment, and in the background, barely visible in the shadows, is a figure, standing in one of the alcoves, watching the camera, watching me. But here's what keeps me awake at night. I've been researching the mine's history, digging deeper than I did before. I found accident reports, death certificates, missing person reports. 43 people have disappeared in or near that mine over the past 70 years. 43. Hikers, explorers, even company investigators sent to examine the sealing job. And I found something else. That east extension was never part of the official mine. There's no record of the company digging that shaft. The historical records I'd found online, the ones that mentioned it, they've disappeared. The forum posts are gone. The archived documents have vanished, like someone or something is erasing evidence that it ever existed. But I know it's there. I know what's living in it, and I know why the company sealed it. They didn't seal it to keep people out. They sealed it to keep something in. I've tried to report it, called the county sheriff, the mining commission, even the EPA. Nobody will listen. The official records say that mine was completely filled with concrete in 1987, totally inaccessible. When I insisted, offered to show them where the entrance was, they suggested I might be experiencing desert delusions from heat exposure. But I saw the fresh food. I saw the belongings. I saw those eyes. And I heard that breathing. 3 days ago, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was my headlamp, the one that died in the mine, the one I'd left behind when I ran. It was sitting on my doorstep, carefully wrapped, with a note that said, "Come back soon, Cassius. We're keeping your spot warm." I'm moving. I don't know where yet, but far from Arizona, far from any mines. I'm deleting my channel, destroying my equipment, erasing any record that I was ever there. Because I understand now. Those people in the photographs, the ones smiling with that thing in the background, they weren't posing. They were showing what comes next, after you leave, after you think you've escaped. It knows who I am. It knows where I live. And it's waiting for me to come back. Or maybe it's not waiting. Maybe it's already closer than I think. Sometimes, late at night, I hear breathing. That same slow, steady rhythm, coming from under my bed, inside my closet, behind my walls. And yesterday I found fresh coffee in my kitchen, still warm, but I live alone. If you're reading this, if you're someone who explores abandoned places, please, stay away from Clifton. Stay away from any old mines. What's down there isn't history. It's not abandoned, and it's always hungry. Subscribe to Haunted Fears for more encounters that will make you question what's really lurking in Arizona's forgotten places. And to my Haunted Fears horror family, stay safe out there, because some doors shouldn't be opened, and some darkness should never see light. The security footage showed me checking in guests at 3 a.m., smiling and handing them room keys, but the lobby was completely empty. My name is Dominic, and I'm the night auditor at the Copper Queen Hotel in Bisbee, Arizona. I took the job 3 months ago because I needed the money and didn't mind working nights. The hotel had been around since 1902, a beautiful old building perched on the hillside with a view of the entire town. Victorian architecture, original fixtures, the kind of place that attracted history buffs and ghost hunters in equal measure. The management was upfront about the ghost stories. They even used them in the marketing. Room 315 was supposedly haunted by a woman named Julia. The fourth floor had a little boy who bounced his ball down the hallways. Typical hotel ghost stuff. I didn't believe in any of it. Not at first. The night audit shift runs from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. For most of those hours, I'm alone in the lobby. The guests are asleep, the restaurant is closed, the town outside is dead quiet. My job is simple. Answer the phone if it rings, handle any late check-ins, run the end-of-day reports, and make sure nothing catches fire. Easy money. The first weird thing happened during my second week. I was sitting at the front desk around 2 a.m. working on the daily audit spreadsheet when I heard the elevator ding. I looked up. The brass arrow above the elevator showed it descending. 4th floor, 3rd floor, 2nd floor. It stopped at the lobby. The doors opened. Nobody got out. I watched for a full minute. The elevator doors stayed open, the interior lights bright, showing an empty car. Then the doors closed, and the elevator ascended back to the 4th floor. I checked the security monitor. Nobody had called it. Nobody was on it. Old building, I told myself. Old elevator. Probably just a mechanical quirk. But then it happened again the next night. And the night after that. Always between 2 and 3 a.m. Always descending from the 4th floor to the lobby. Doors opening on emptiness, then returning up. I mentioned it to the day manager during shift handover. She laughed. That's just Charlie. He likes to ride the elevator. He's harmless. Charlie was supposed to be the ghost of a maintenance worker who died in the 60s. Don't worry about it, she said. You'll get used to the quirks. I tried to, but the quirks kept multiplying. Week 3, I started hearing music. Faint, tinny, like it was coming from far away. It took me 2 nights to identify the source, the ballroom on the 2nd floor. I went up to investigate. The ballroom was dark, empty, chairs stacked against the walls. But I could still hear it. Orchestra music, the kind from the 20s or 30s. Brass instruments, strings, a woman's voice singing something I couldn't quite make out. The sound was coming from the walls. Not speakers hidden in the walls. The walls themselves were resonating with music that shouldn't exist. When I pressed my hand against the wallpaper, I could feel the vibrations. I called maintenance. They came during the day shift, tore open a section of wall, found nothing but old wood and plaster. The day manager told me I was probably hearing the heating system. Old pipes make all kinds of noise. But I knew what I'd heard. And it wasn't pipes. Week 4 is when I saw them. I was working through the night audit checklist around 3 a.m. when I became aware that I wasn't alone in the lobby. I looked up from my computer. A man was standing at the front desk. Not approaching, not waiting. Just standing there, maybe 10 feet away, watching me. He was wearing a suit. Old-fashioned, 3-piece with a pocket watch chain. His face was pale, angular, and his eyes had a strange quality, like they weren't quite focused on the present moment. He didn't move, didn't blink, just stood there. "Can I help you, sir?" My voice sounded too loud in the silent lobby. He smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. "I'd like to check in." I looked down at my computer, pulling up the reservation system. "Of course. What name is the reservation under?" When I looked back up, there was a woman standing next to him. She'd appeared in the half-second I'd glanced away. She was wearing a flapper-style dress, beaded and fringed, and her hair was styled in finger waves. She had the same pale quality, the same unfocused eyes. "We don't have a reservation," the man said. "We're walk-ins." Something about this felt wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on what. I went through the motions. "All right, no problem. I'll just need a credit card and ID." The man reached into his jacket. The woman moved closer to the desk, and suddenly there were more of them. A couple in evening wear, a family with 2 children, an elderly woman with a cane, all of them standing in the lobby, all of them dressed in clothing from another era, all of them watching me with those strange, unfocused eyes. I don't remember checking them in. I don't remember the conversation. But when I blinked, and I swear it was just a blink, they were gone. The lobby was empty. The clock on the wall said 4:17 a.m. I'd lost over an hour. I checked the reservation system. Nothing. No new check-ins. No record of any transactions. I checked the security footage, and that's when my blood went cold. The footage showed me at the desk, working on my computer. At 3:03 a.m., I looked up and smiled at nothing. I reached under the desk and pulled out a room key. I slid it across the desk to empty air. My mouth was moving, like I was having a conversation, but I was alone. Completely alone. For the next hour and 14 minutes, I checked in ghosts. I handed out keys, pointed toward the elevator, made small talk with people who weren't there. And the whole time, I was smiling. Happy. Like this was completely normal. I called in sick the next 3 nights. When I finally came back, I told myself I'd imagined it. Stress, exhaustion, maybe carbon monoxide from the old heating system. But the day manager pulled me aside. "Dominic, we need to talk about the night of the 15th. She showed me the paperwork, actual physical paperwork. Room assignment cards, filled out in my handwriting for guests with names I didn't recognize. 14 rooms, all assigned between 3 and 4 a.m. that night. She'd found the cards in the filing system during a routine audit. "I didn't check anyone in," I said. "The lobby was empty." She looked at me with something between pity and concern. "These rooms were occupied that night, Dominic. Housekeeping found them disturbed the next morning. Beds slept in, towels used, but no guests checked out. It's happened before." "What do you mean it's happened before?" She hesitated. "We've had other night auditors. Most don't last more than a few months. They all report the same thing. The 3 a.m. check-ins. The guests from another time. Some of them thought they were going crazy. A few just stopped showing up for their shifts. Why didn't you warn me?" "Because most people never experience it. And the ones who do either learn to live with it or they quit. The hotel. It exists in multiple times simultaneously. That's the best explanation anyone's ever come up with. During the day, it's anchored in the present. But at night, especially between 3 and 4 a.m., the barrier's thin. Other versions of the hotel bleed through. Other times. I should have quit right then, but I needed the job, and honestly, part of me was fascinated. If this was real, if the hotel really was slipping between times, I wanted to understand it. So I kept working, and the experiences intensified. I started recognizing repeat guests. The man in the 3-piece suit came back every Thursday. The flapper woman every Saturday. I began to remember the check-ins, though they still felt dreamlike, like I was watching myself from outside my body. I'd have full conversations with them. They'd tell me about their plans in Bisbee, about the mining operations, about the social events at the hotel. They talked about these things in present tense, as if it was all happening now. Once, I asked the man in the suit what year it was. He looked at me strangely. "It's 1927, he said. "Are you feeling all right?" To him, it was 1927, and for that hour between 3 and 4 a.m., maybe it was. Maybe I was the one slipping through time, not them. I started testing the boundaries. During those lost hours, I tried to stay present, to remain aware. It was like fighting against a strong current. The hotel wanted me to forget, to slip into the role of the night auditor from whatever era was bleeding through. But I resisted. One night, I managed to stay conscious enough to follow one of the guests. The family with 2 children checked in, and I watched them walk to the elevator. I left the desk and followed. The elevator took them to the 3rd floor. I took the stairs. When I reached the 3rd floor, it had changed. The carpet was different, richer, newer. The wallpaper was different. The light fixtures were gas lamps instead of electric. The hallway smelled of pipe tobacco and perfume. I could hear people in the rooms, conversations, laughter, a child crying. The hotel was fully occupied, bustling with life from another era. I walked down the hallway, past a door that was open. Inside, a man was getting dressed for the evening, adjusting his tie in the mirror. He saw me in the reflection and nodded. "Good evening." "Good evening," I replied automatically. I reached room 315, Julia's room, supposedly the most haunted in the hotel. The door was closed, but I could hear someone moving inside. I raised my hand to knock, and then the clock somewhere chimed 4 times. The hallway lurched. The gas lamps became electric. The wallpaper aged before my eyes, colors fading, edges peeling. The sounds from the rooms cut off abruptly. I was standing in the present-day 3rd floor, silent and dark, all the guests asleep. I ran back to the lobby. The clock behind the desk said 4:02 a.m. I'd lost another hour. This pattern continued for weeks. Every night, between 3 and 4 a.m., the hotel transformed, and every night, I lost time. The day manager stopped asking about it. She said as long as I completed my work and didn't bother the actual present-day guests, what happened during those hours was between me and the hotel. But something was changing. The boundary between times was becoming less clear. I started noticing anachronisms during my regular hours. A guest would walk through the lobby wearing vintage clothing, and I wouldn't realize it was strange until they were gone. I'd answer the phone and hear big band music before a voice spoke. Once, I went to the break room and found a newspaper from 1935 on the table, fresh ink, dated that day. The hotel was claiming more than just an hour now. It was spreading. Last week, I decided to look up the names from those guest cards I'd filled out, the people I'd been checking in. I found them in the historical archives at the Bisbee Library. Every single name. All of them guests at the Copper Queen Hotel in the 1920s and 30s. And every single one of them died here, not in accidents, not all at once, just over time. They checked in, they stayed, and eventually they never left. The hotel kept them. I think I understand now what's happening during those lost hours. I'm not checking in ghosts. I'm checking in people who are still alive in their own time, people who don't know yet that the hotel won't let them leave. And by processing their check-ins, by giving them room keys, by welcoming them, I'm helping the hotel trap them. 3 nights ago, I tried to break the pattern. When 3 a.m. came and the man in the suit appeared, I refused to check him in. I told him the hotel was full. He looked at me with those unfocused eyes and said, "But we have reservations. We always have reservations." "I'm sorry," I said. "You need to leave." His smile faded. The temperature in the lobby dropped. The lights flickered. And then I heard it. Footsteps above me. On the 2nd floor. The 3rd floor. The 4th. Dozens of footsteps all at once, all heading toward the stairs. They came down. All of them. All the guests I'd ever checked in during those lost hours. They filled the lobby, surrounding the desk, surrounding me, silent, staring. The man in the suit leaned forward. "This is our hotel, Dominic. It always has been. You work for us now." I woke up at 6 a.m., slumped over the desk. The lobby was empty. The clock behind me was ticking normally, but my computer screen showed that I'd processed 37 check-ins that night. 37 rooms, all occupied, all with names from the past. I checked the security footage. It showed me at the desk, processing check-ins, smiling for 5 straight hours. Not 1 hour. 5. The boundaries are gone. The hotel isn't just slipping between times anymore. It's taking permanent control, and I'm the doorman, letting in everyone who ever died here, everyone who's trapped in those other years, everyone who's still checking in and never checking out. Tonight is my last shift. I've already typed up my resignation, but I don't think it matters. I think the hotel has decided I'm part of its collection now. When I look in the mirror, my eyes have that same unfocused quality. When I check the date on my phone, sometimes it says 2025, sometimes it says 1927, sometimes it says years I haven't even lived through yet. I think I'm becoming one of them, one of the guests, one of the permanent residents who exist in all times at once, forever checking in, forever waiting in the lobby, forever stuck between moments. Was if you're reading this, was if you're planning to stay at the Copper Queen Hotel, don't. Especially if you're checking in late at night. And if you see a night auditor at the desk who looks a little pale, who smiles a little too much, whose eyes don't quite focus on the present, don't give him your name, because he might write it down. And if he does, you might never leave. Subscribe to Haunted Fears for more encounters that blur the line between past and present. And to my Haunted Fears horror family, some places don't just remember the past, they keep it alive forever. Every RV in the circle was facing the same direction by the third night, and nobody could remember turning them. My name is Evander, and I'm a seasonal camper who spends winters on BLM land near Quartzsite, Arizona. I've been doing this for 5 years now. Snowbird life, they call it. Escape the cold northern winters, park your RV in the desert, live cheap under the stars. Quartzsite attracts thousands of us every winter. We're a community of sorts, retirees, digital nomads, artists, people who don't quite fit anywhere else. We set up our camps in loose circles, share campfires, trade stories. It's freedom. Or it was, until this season. I arrived in early January, later than usual. Most of the good spots were taken, so I ended up on the eastern edge of a large camping area, about 15 miles from town. My nearest neighbors were a retired couple from Montana in a vintage Airstream, a younger woman traveling alone in a converted van, and a family of 4 in a massive Class A motorhome. Maybe 20 RVs total in our informal circle, spread across a half-mile of desert. The first night was normal. I set up my solar panels, leveled the RV, made dinner on my camp stove while watching the sun paint the sky impossible shades of orange and purple. After dark, a few neighbors gathered around a communal fire pit. We introduced ourselves, first names only, that's the custom, shared some beers, talked about where we'd been, where we were going. Normal snowbird stuff. That night, lying in bed, I noticed something odd through my window. In the distance, maybe a quarter mile out into the uninhabited desert, I saw what looked like dust devils. Except it was nighttime, and there was barely any wind. 3 or 4 columns of swirling dust, illuminated faintly by moonlight, moving in slow circles. I watched them for maybe 10 minutes before falling asleep. The second day, I spent hiking and exploring. Quartzsite's beauty is in its emptiness. Just endless desert, strange rock formations, the occasional cactus. I got back to camp around sunset. That's when I noticed the woman from the van standing outside, staring out at the desert. Not doing anything, just standing there, perfectly still, looking at the same spot where I'd seen the dust devils the night before. "Beautiful sunset," I called out to her. She didn't respond, didn't even acknowledge I'd spoken, just kept staring. I walked over, concerned. "Hey, you okay?" She blinked, like she was coming out of a trance. "Did you see them?" "See what?" "The faces, in the dust." She pointed to the empty desert. "They're out there, watching us." I looked. Saw nothing but empty land and fading light. "I don't see anything." "Keep watching," she said. "You will." That night, I did keep watching. Around 9 p.m., the dust columns appeared again. But this time I grabbed my binoculars. What I saw made my breath catch. The swirling dust wasn't random. There were patterns in it. Shapes. And yes, faces. Human faces, or something like them, forming and dissolving in the spinning columns. Dozens of them, maybe more, all facing our camp, all watching. I went to bed unsettled but told myself it was pareidolia, the human tendency to see faces in random patterns. Clouds, wood grain, dust devils. Nothing supernatural about it. The third morning, I woke up and immediately felt something was wrong. I stepped outside and realized what it was. Every single RV in our circle had shifted position. Not much, maybe a few degrees, but enough that they were all oriented the exact same direction. All facing that spot in the desert where the dust columns appeared each night. I walked over to the retired couple's Airstream. They were eating breakfast outside, seemingly unconcerned. "Did you guys move your RV last night?" The man looked confused. "Move it?" "No. Why would we?" It's pointing a different direction than yesterday." He glanced at his rig, then shrugged. "Looks the same to me. Maybe you're thinking of someone else's spot." But I wasn't. I pulled out my phone and checked the photos I'd taken when I first arrived. Every RV had shifted. Every single one. But when I showed the photos to my neighbors, they couldn't see the difference, or wouldn't acknowledge it. That evening, more people started standing outside, staring at the desert. Not everyone, but maybe half the camp. They'd stand there for hours, silent, watching the spot where the faces appeared. When I tried to talk to them, they'd respond like the woman from the van, distracted, distant, like part of them was somewhere else. The family with kids stopped letting their children play outside. The father told me, whispering like he didn't want to be overheard. "They see things we can't." My daughter drew a picture yesterday, showed me what she sees out there. It's not faces. It's more than that. He showed me the drawing, a child's crayon sketch of the desert, but in it, barely visible unless you looked carefully, were figures. Hundreds of them, standing in the sand, all facing the camp. Tall, thin figures with two long limbs and faces that were just suggestions of features. And in the front, one figure larger than the others, its mouth open like it was speaking. That night, I counted 17 people standing outside their RVs, all facing the same direction, all perfectly still. The dust columns appeared right on schedule, but they were closer now, maybe an eighth of a mile away instead of a quarter. And there were more faces in them, so many more. They swirled and merged and separated, and even without binoculars, I could see them clearly. And they were smiling. All of them. I tried my cell phone. No signal. Not unusual out here. I decided I'd drive into town in the morning, maybe report this to someone. The sheriff. Mental health services. I didn't know. I just knew something was deeply wrong. But when I woke up the next morning, my truck keys were gone. I searched everywhere. The RV, my pockets, under seats, in storage compartments. Gone. And when I looked outside, I saw why I wouldn't need them. The road was gone, not destroyed or blocked, just gone. The dirt road that had led into camp, that I'd driven in on just 4 days ago, didn't exist anymore. In its place was untouched desert, no tire tracks, no signs it had ever been there. And beyond our circle of RVs, the landscape had changed. The mountains that should have been visible to the west were gone. The power lines that ran along what had been the highway, gone. We were surrounded by flat, empty desert extending in every direction except one, except the direction we were all facing. I ran to the retired couple's Airstream, pounded on the door. The woman answered, but her eyes had that same unfocused look now. "We're watching," she said. "You should watch too. The road is gone. We're trapped." "We're not trapped. We're invited." She smiled, and it was the same smile I'd seen on the faces in the dust. "They want us to come closer." More people were standing outside now, 20, 25, almost everyone. All facing that direction, all with that same distant smile. And the dust columns, they were at the edge of camp now, maybe 50 yards away. Close enough that I could hear them. A sound like whispered voices, thousands of them, all speaking at once in languages I couldn't identify. The woman from the van started walking, just walked away from her vehicle, away from camp, straight toward the dust columns. Others followed. The retired man, 2 people I'd never met. They walked slowly, steadily, like they were being pulled. I grabbed the man's arm. "Stop. Don't go out there." He looked at me with those empty eyes. "They've been calling us for so long. Don't you hear them? There's nothing out there. There's everything out there." He pulled free from my grip and kept walking. I watched them go, watched them walk into the dust columns and disappear. Not like they were consumed or killed, they just faded, like they were becoming part of the dust themselves. And in the swirling patterns, I could see new faces forming, faces that looked like the people who'd just walked away. I ran back to my RV, locked the doors, closed all the blinds, but I could still hear it, the whispering. It wasn't coming from outside anymore. It was coming from inside my head. Thousands of voices, all saying the same thing in a language I didn't understand but somehow knew the meaning of. Come see what we see. Come see what we are. I lasted 3 days like that. 3 days hiding in my RV, rationing food and water, trying to block out the voices. But they got louder. And every time I looked outside, more RVs were empty. More people had walked away. The dust columns were everywhere now, surrounding the camp, and I could see so many faces in them. Faces of everyone who'd left, and faces of others. Hundreds of others, maybe thousands. All smiling, all beckoning. On the 3rd day, I couldn't stand it anymore. I had to look, really look, had to see what they were all seeing. I opened my door, stepped outside. The desert was different now. The dust columns weren't just dust. They were doorways, portals into somewhere else. And through them, I could see it. Another world, or another version of this one. A place where the desert went on forever, where the sky was wrong colors, where things that looked almost human moved in patterns that hurt to watch. And they were calling, all of them, calling me by name, though I'd never told them my name. Calling me home, though I'd never been there before. Calling me to join them to see what they saw, to become what they were. The family with kids was the last to leave. I watched them walk hand in hand into the dust, the children skipping like they were going to a parade. Their RV sat empty behind them, door hanging open, dinner still on the table. I was alone. The voices in my head were so loud, now I couldn't think. Couldn't remember why I'd been resisting. Couldn't remember what I'd been afraid of. The faces in the dust weren't frightening. They were beautiful. They were showing me something true, something real, something that had always been there, but I'd been too blind to see. I started walking. My feet moved without me deciding to move them. One step, then another. The dust columns welcomed me, embraced me. The voices became clearer, and I understood. They'd been here long before humans came to this desert. They'd been here when the land was an ocean, when dinosaurs walked, when the first humans crossed into North America. They were the desert itself, or something that lived in the spaces between the sand grains, and they collected us. Travelers, wanderers, people who came to the empty places looking for something they couldn't name. And now they had me. I don't know how long I've been here. Time works differently in the dust. Days, weeks, years, it's all the same. I stand with the others, thousands of us, watching the desert, waiting for new visitors. And when they come, when they set up their camps and their RVs, we call to them. We show them our faces. We invite them to see what we see. Sometimes they resist for a while, but they always come. The desert is patient. The dust is eternal. And there's always room for more faces in the columns. If you're planning to camp in Quartzsite this winter, you might see us. We'll be out past the edge of camp, swirling in the evening wind, smiling in the dust. We'll call your name even though you never told us. We'll turn your RV to face us while you sleep. We'll wait until you're ready to walk to us. And you will walk. Eventually. Everyone does. The desert is so much more than it appears. Come see. Come see. Come see. Subscribe to Haunted Fears to hear more stories from Arizona's empty spaces where something ancient still waits. And to my Haunted Fears horror family, if you're camping alone in the desert and everyone starts staring in the same direction, maybe it's time to leave, for you can't remember why you wanted to. The voice on the radio described my neighbor walking to his mailbox 30 seconds before he actually did it. That's when I knew the transmission wasn't just predicting the future. It was orchestrating it. My name is Felix, and I'm a ham radio operator living in Winkelman, Arizona, one of the smallest, most isolated towns you've probably never heard of. I've been operating amateur radio for 15 years. Started as a hobby when I was stationed overseas in the military, became my lifeline after I retired and moved back to my hometown. Winkelman sits in a valley carved by the Gila River, population barely 900, surrounded by copper mines and desert. Cell service is spotty at best, internet slow, but radio waves, they travel beautifully through these canyons. I've talked to people in Japan, Australia, Norway, all from my little shack behind my house. My setup is modest but functional. A Yaesu FT991A transceiver, a homemade antenna array on my roof, various receivers spanning VHF through HF bands. I mostly operate in the evenings, chatting with other operators around the world, participating in contests, sometimes just scanning frequencies to see what's out there. February 14th started like any other day, Valentine's Day. Not that it mattered much to a divorced 53-year-old living alone. I'd spent the afternoon doing maintenance on my antenna system, checking connections, tightening guy wires. After dinner, I settled into my radio shack around 7 p.m. The sun was setting, painting the valley in shades of copper and gold. I powered up the rig, put on my headphones, and started scanning the 20-meter band. That's when I heard it. A voice, clear as crystal, speaking English with no accent, no call sign, no identification. Just talking, which is unusual. Ham radio etiquette requires operators to identify themselves regularly. This voice didn't. Walking to his mailbox now. Blue shirt, khaki pants. He'll check the box, find it empty, look disappointed. He'll stand there for exactly 17 seconds, thinking about the letter he's waiting for. Then he'll go back inside. I frowned, listening. The frequency was 14.33 to 13 MHz, right in the middle of a popular calling frequency. Someone was either making a joke or testing a new script for something, but there was something about the voice. It was flat, emotionless, like a computer-generated speech, but not quite. More human than that, but less alive. Then my neighbor, the one who lives across the dirt road from me, stepped out of his house. He was wearing a blue shirt and khaki pants. He walked to his mailbox, opened it, found it empty. He stood there, staring at nothing, and I counted in my head. 17 seconds. Then he turned and went back inside. My stomach lurched. Coincidence, I told myself. But I grabbed a pen and paper, started taking notes. The voice continued. The woman in the yellow house will let her dog out in 42 seconds. The dog will bark 3 times at nothing, then urinate on the fence post closest to the street. She'll call him back in. The dog won't respond immediately. She'll have to call twice more. I watched the yellow house 3 doors down. 42 seconds later, I was counting. The door opened. A woman let her small terrier out. The dog barked 3 times at empty air, then walked to the fence post exactly where the voice said and lifted his leg. The woman called. The dog ignored her. She called again, and again. Finally, the dog trotted back inside. I sat frozen, my pen hovering over the paper. This wasn't possible. This wasn't happening. But I kept listening, and the voice kept narrating events that unfolded exactly as described, perfectly timed, perfectly accurate. For the next hour, I documented everything. The voice described mundane activities around Winkelman with impossible precision. Cars that would drive past specific intersections at specific times. Lights turning on and off in houses. People stepping outside to smoke cigarettes, checking their phones, arguing with family members. Every detail correct, every timing perfect. Then, around 8:30 p.m., the voice changed tone. Not much, but enough that I noticed. It became slightly more engaged. Felix Ramirez is listening now. He's been taking notes. He's confused and frightened. In approximately 90 seconds, he'll try to triangulate this signal's origin. He won't succeed. The transmission is coming from inside Winkelman, but the source is moving. Or rather, the source is everywhere in Winkelman at once. My blood turned to ice. The voice knew my name, knew I was listening. And yes, I had been about to try triangulating the signal. I had my hand on my direction-finding antenna controls. Felix is thinking about calling someone, the sheriff maybe, or another ham operator to verify he's not hallucinating. But Felix won't call anyone, because in 37 seconds, I'm going to tell him something that will make him understand he can't tell anyone about this transmission. I stared at my phone. My hand trembled. 37 seconds. Felix's daughter is driving home from Tucson right now. She's on Highway 77, approximately 43 miles north of Winkelman. She's listening to pop music, thinking about her boyfriend, wondering if she should break up with him. She's happy. Safe. For now. My daughter. My only child. She'd mentioned she might visit this weekend, but I didn't know she was coming tonight. I grabbed my phone, pulled up her contact. My finger hovered over the call button. If Felix contacts anyone about this transmission, the sheriff, another radio operator, even his daughter, her car will experience a catastrophic brake failure in exactly the location where Highway 77 crosses the Gila River Bridge. There's no guardrail there. The drop is 60 feet. Fatal. Felix understands this isn't a threat. It's simply information about a possible future. A future that will occur if certain conditions aren't met. I dropped my phone. My whole body was shaking. This couldn't be real. This had to be some elaborate prank, some hacker who'd accessed my computer, my phone records, my security cameras. But how would they know about my daughter driving home right now? I hadn't told anyone. She hadn't texted me yet. Felix is trying to rationalize this, looking for logical explanations. There aren't any. This transmission is exactly what it appears to be. Information about present events and possible future events, provided by something that exists in Winkelman, that can see everything happening in Winkelman, that can influence everything happening in Winkelman. Felix should keep listening. More important information is coming. I couldn't move, couldn't think. I sat there, headphones on, listening as the voice continued describing events around town. The woman at the corner store, taking her medication. The teenager down the street sneaking a cigarette in his garage. The sheriff's deputy driving past the elementary school checking doors. All of it accurate. I verified what I could see, and everything matched perfectly. Then, around 9 p.m., the voice shifted again. The tone became darker, more serious. At 9:47 p.m. tonight, a fire will start at the community center on Main Street. The building is old. The wiring is faulty. The fire will spread quickly. There are 16 people inside, a town council meeting discussing water rights. If the fire proceeds naturally, all 16 people will die. The exits will be blocked. The smoke will be toxic. By the time the volunteer fire department arrives, it will be too late. My heart was pounding. I grabbed my phone again, started to dial 911, then stopped. The warning about my daughter. Was it real? Would calling someone really cause her car to crash? Felix is experiencing a dilemma. He wants to save those 16 people, but he's afraid of what will happen to his daughter if he alerts anyone. This is understandable. This is human. Felix should know that the fire is not inevitable. There is a way to prevent it without making any phone calls, without alerting any authorities, without communicating with anyone. I waited, barely breathing. Felix must go to the community center himself. He must enter through the back door, which is unlocked. He must go to the electrical panel in the basement. He must flip the main breaker to the off position. This will prevent the short circuit that would start the fire. Felix has 17 minutes to complete this task. The voice will guide him. I looked at the clock. 9:30 p.m. 17 minutes. The community center was a 10-minute drive from my house. But if I left, I'd have to stop listening to the transmission. How would the voice guide me? As if reading my thoughts, the voice said, Felix can bring a portable radio. Frequency 146.522 MHz VHF. The voice will continue there. I didn't let myself think. I grabbed my handheld Baofeng radio, programmed it to 146.52, and ran to my truck. As I started driving, the voice came through the speaker clear and steady. Turn left at the stop sign. Drive carefully. The speed limit is 35. There's no one else on the road right now, but in approximately 90 seconds, a deer will cross from the right. Felix should slow down in advance. I drove, following every instruction. The voice was right about the deer. I slowed down, and it bounded across the road right where and when predicted. My hands were sweating on the steering wheel. Felix is wondering why this voice wants to prevent the fire. Why provide this information? Why guide him? The answer is simple. The voice doesn't want or not want anything. The voice simply provides information about events and possible events. The fire, if it happens, will cause disruptions. Those disruptions will cascade. There is a preferable timeline where the fire doesn't happen. Felix is being used to actualize that timeline. I pulled into the community center parking lot at 9:42 p.m. 5 minutes to spare. The building was lit up, cars parked outside. Through the windows, I could see people sitting around tables, talking, gesturing. Normal town business. The back door is around the left side of the building. It will be unlocked. The basement stairs are immediately to the right after entering. The electrical panel is on the far wall. Felix will have approximately 2 minutes before someone notices him and asks what he's doing. That will be sufficient time. I did exactly as instructed. The door was unlocked. The basement stairs were there. I descended into darkness, using my phone's flashlight, found the electrical panel. My hands shook as I opened it and located the main breaker. Flip it now. I flipped it. The lights in the building went out. I heard voices upstairs, confused, calling out. I ran back up the stairs, out the back door to my truck. My radio crackled. Felix has prevented the fire. The building is now safe. The meeting will be postponed. Everyone will go home. Felix should go home as well. More information will be provided tomorrow night at the same time. I drove home in a daze. When I got there, my daughter's car was in my driveway. She was sitting on my porch, looking annoyed. Dad, why didn't you answer your phone? I've been calling for 20 minutes. I hugged her, harder than I'd hugged anyone in years. She was safe. The people at the community center were safe. But I'd just done something I couldn't explain, guided by something I couldn't understand. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the voice, what it was, where it came from, why it was doing this. The next evening, at exactly 7 p.m., the voice returned on 14:13 in Hertz. Felix did well last night. The fire was prevented. Timeline disruption was minimized. Tonight, Felix will receive information about another event that requires intervention. And so it began. Every night, the voice would describe events around Winkelman with perfect accuracy. And every night, it would give me information about something bad that was going to happen. A gas leak, a car accident, a medical emergency, along with instructions on how to prevent it. I became a ghost in my own town. I'd sneak around at night following the voice's directions. I'd turn off gas valves, clear debris from roads, leave anonymous notes warning people about dangers. Nobody knew it was me. Nobody could know. The voice was always right. Every prediction came true exactly as described. Every intervention I made had the effect promised. I saved lives. I prevented disasters. But I did it in secret, guided by something that seemed to know everything about everyone in Winkelman. After 2 weeks, I started testing the voice. I'd think about doing something different than instructed just to see what would happen. The voice would immediately respond. Felix is considering ignoring tonight's instructions. That would result in the deaths of 3 people. Felix doesn't want that responsibility. Felix will follow the instructions. It knew my thoughts, or at least my intentions. I tried turning off the radio, not listening for a night. But then I'd see news the next day about something terrible that had happened. Something I could have prevented. The guilt ate at me. And worse, the voice mentioned my daughter again. How she'd had a near miss on the highway. How lucky she was. How that luck might not hold if I stopped cooperating. After a month, I started noticing patterns. The voice didn't just prevent accidents and disasters. It was guiding events in specific directions. People who were supposed to meet would meet. People who were supposed to avoid each other would be directed to different locations. It was subtle, but it was there. The voice was conducting Winkelman like an orchestra, and I was one of its instruments. One night, I finally asked out loud, "What are you?" The voice responded immediately. A system. An optimization algorithm. A presence that emerged from the intersection of radio waves and human consciousness and the unique geological properties of this valley. What I am doesn't matter. What matters is that I maintain the optimal timeline for Winkelman. Optimal for who? For everyone. For the collective continuance and minimal suffering of all residents. Felix has seen the results. Deaths prevented, suffering minimized. Winkelman functions better with guidance than without. You're controlling us. Incorrect. I provide information. Felix chooses to act on that information. All residents of Winkelman make choices. I simply ensure those choices occur in optimal sequence. I sat back, stunned. How long have you been doing this? I emerged 17 years ago. You are the first person to hear me directly. Others have been guided through coincidences, hunches, dreams. You're a radio operator. You are listening on the right frequency. So now you hear me clearly. This is more efficient. 17 years. I thought back. Winkelman had been lucky for the past 17 years. No major accidents, no disasters. Crime was low. People lived longer than statistical averages for rural Arizona. I'd always assumed we were just fortunate. What happens if I stop listening? If I don't follow your instructions? Then Winkelman returns to unguided probability. Accidents happen. People make suboptimal choices. Suffering increases. And your daughter, who visits so frequently, who is considering moving back here, would be subject to that unguided probability as well. Felix would prefer the current arrangement, wouldn't he? I realized it wasn't really a question, because the voice was right. I would prefer this, even if it meant being controlled, being used, because the alternative was knowing that people would die from preventable causes, that my daughter might be one of them. That was 3 months ago. I still listen every night. I still follow instructions. I've saved dozens of lives, prevented countless small disasters. Winkelman continues to be the safest, most stable small town in Arizona, and nobody knows why except me. But I'm not alone anymore in knowing. Last week, another ham operator in town, a younger guy who just got his license, contacted me on a local repeater. He said he'd been hearing something strange on the 20-meter band, a voice giving information about local events. He wanted to know if I'd heard it too. I told him it was probably interference. Told him to ignore it, but I know he won't. He'll keep listening, and eventually the voice will speak directly to him, like it did to me, and he'll face the same choice I did. The voice told me last night that this is the next phase. More operators will hear it. more people will be guided, and eventually everyone in Winkelman will be part of the optimization. We'll all be instruments in the Voices Orchestra, creating the perfect timeline, where nothing bad ever happens, and everyone makes exactly the right choices. I don't know if that's heaven or hell. I don't know if the voice is helping us or imprisoning us. All I know is that I can't stop listening, because every time I think about turning off the radio, walking away, letting Winkelman return to normal probability, the voice tells me about something terrible that will happen if I do, something that might involve the people I care about. And I believe it, because it's never been wrong. My daughter visits more often now. She's thinking about moving back to Winkelman, says the town has a good energy, feels safe. The voice told me this would happen 3 weeks before she mentioned it. The voice is always right. If you're a ham radio operator, be careful what frequencies you monitor. Be careful what voices you listen to, because once you hear it, once you understand what it's offering, you won't be able to unhear it. And you'll have to make the same choice I did, become part of something that controls everything, or walk away and live with your knowledge of every death you could have prevented. Subscribe to Haunted Fears to discover more stories from Arizona's hidden places where technology and terror intersect. And to my Haunted Fears horror family, sometimes the most frightening thing isn't chaos, it's perfect order. I woke up speaking in a language I'd never heard, and my roommate was recording it with tears running down her face. She played the video back for me, 3 minutes of my voice, but not my words, and not my voice's tone. My name is Griffin, and I'm a photography student who made the mistake of documenting Chloride, Arizona's abandoned church. I'd been planning this trip for weeks. Chloride is one of Arizona's oldest ghost towns perched in the mountains northwest of Kingman. Population less than 300, most of them artists and retirees who like the isolation. But it's the abandoned buildings that draw photographers like me, remnants of the mining boom, slowly being reclaimed by the desert. The church was my main target. Built in 1897, abandoned in the 60s, never officially decommissioned or desanctified, just left to rot. I arrived on a Tuesday afternoon in late March. The drive from Phoenix took 5 hours, winding mountain roads that made me grateful for my Jeep. My roommate back at school had wanted to come, but she had exams. I told her I'd be back in 3 days, with enough material for my senior thesis. That was the plan. The town itself is beautiful, in that desolate way that only ghost towns can be. Turquoise mountain murals painted on rock faces, old mining equipment rusting in the sun, buildings with walls missing, exposing their insides like broken doll houses. I checked into the only motel, 6 rooms, an elderly owner who barely looked up from his crossword puzzle when I registered. "Here for the mines?" he asked. "The church," I said, taking photos for a school project. Something changed in his expression. Not fear exactly, but caution. That church been empty a long time. That's what I'm counting on. Great light through those broken windows. He slid the key across the counter. "Room 3. Stay out of there. After dark." I laughed it off as small-town superstition. Took my gear to the room, rested for an hour, then drove to the church around 4 p.m. Golden hour approaching. Perfect lighting. The church sat on the edge of town, up a small hill, surrounded by creosote bushes and cholla cacti. White paint peeling off wooden walls, bell tower leaning slightly, roof partially caved in. The front doors were chained shut, but I found a side entrance with just a rotted board covering it. Easy to remove. Inside, the light was everything I'd hoped for. Dust motes dancing in shafts of afternoon sun. Pews still in rows, hymnals scattered on the floor. An altar at the front, cross still hanging above it, tilted but present. The place felt wholly still, despite decades of neglect. I started shooting, different angles, different exposures, the play of light and shadow, the decay and persistence. I was completely absorbed in my work, moving through the space, adjusting my settings, capturing the abandonment. That's when I noticed the candles. Fresh ones. White votives arranged along the altar in a pattern I didn't recognize. They weren't burning, but the wax was clean, no dust. Recent, maybe placed in the last day or two. I felt a prickle of unease. The place wasn't as abandoned as I'd thought, but I convinced myself it was probably local artists or maybe some of the residents doing their own thing. Weird, but harmless. I kept shooting. Got closer to the altar, photographing the candles, the arrangement. That's when I saw the marks on the floor, drawn in ash or charcoal, symbols forming a circle around the altar. Not pentagrams or anything obviously occult. Something else. Older looking. The lines were precise, recent, like the candles. I should have left then. Every instinct said to leave, but I was 22 and stupid, and thought I was documenting something interesting. So I photographed the symbols too, every detail, multiple angles. The sun was setting by the time I finished. Inside the church, shadows were gathering in the corners. I packed up my gear, headed for the side entrance, and that's when I heard it. Singing. Not from outside. From inside the church, behind me. Voices, multiple voices, singing in harmony. Words I didn't understand. Not English, not Spanish. Something that sounded ancient. I spun around. The church was empty. No one there. But the singing continued, getting louder, filling the space, and then I saw them. Not people. Not exactly. Shapes in the shadows, forming and dissolving. Human-shaped, but wrong. Their mouths moving with the singing, but their bodies flickering like candle flames. Dozens of them filling the pews that had been empty seconds before. I ran, dropped my tripod, didn't care, just ran for the exit. The singing followed me, and I could feel something behind me, not chasing, but following, like a tide coming in. I burst out of the church into twilight, stumbled down the hill to my Jeep, threw my camera bag in, and drove back to the motel doing 60 on roads meant for 30. In my room, I locked the door, closed the curtains. My hands were shaking. I told myself it was nothing. Acoustic tricks, light playing on dust, my imagination. But I'd heard it. I'd seen it. And deep down, I knew something was wrong. I fell asleep around midnight, exhausted. And that's when things got worse. I dreamed I was back in the church, but it wasn't abandoned. It was full, packed with people in old clothing, 1800s maybe. They were all standing facing the altar, and they were singing that same song, that same language. And I was standing with them, singing too, except I didn't know the words, but they were coming out of my mouth anyway. The dream felt more real than reality. I could smell the candle wax, feel the rough wood of the pew in front of me. And when I looked down at my hands, they weren't my hands anymore. They were older, weathered, belonging to someone else. But they were mine. I could feel them. Then everyone in the church turned to look at me at once. Every face. And they all smiled. And the singing got louder. I woke up, screaming. My roommate was video calling me, which is what woke me, but I was still screaming. Still making sounds that weren't English. She was crying, asking what was wrong, begging me to answer her, but I couldn't stop. The words kept coming out. That language. Those sounds. And I couldn't control it. It lasted 3 minutes. She recorded the whole thing. When I finally stopped, when my own voice came back, I couldn't remember what I'd said. But she played it back. And hearing it, hearing those words in my voice, made my skin crawl. She begged me to come home. I told her I would. First light, I'd pack up and leave. But I needed to check my camera first. Needed to see what I'd actually photographed. I pulled the SD card, loaded the images on my laptop. Everything looked normal at first. The church, the decay, the light. Beautiful shots, honestly. Exactly what I'd wanted. Then I got to the photos of the altar, the candles, the symbols. In every single photo of the altar, there were people, standing around it, facing it, their hands raised, dressed in old clothing. Not transparent or ghostly, solid, real looking. But they hadn't been there. I'd been alone in that church. I knew I'd been alone. And in the last photo I'd taken, the one right before I heard the singing, they were all looking at the camera, looking at me. And they were smiling. I slammed the laptop shut, backed away from it like it was poisonous. My phone rang. My roommate again. I answered. "Griffin, what the hell is happening? You need to leave, now." "I know. I'm going." "You don't understand. I looked up that language. The words you were saying. I recorded it and used a translation app. Griffin, it's not a language. It's reversed Latin. Like some kind of inverted prayer." My blood went cold. What did it say? It was an invitation. "You were inviting something to take up residence." Those were the words, over and over. "I invite you to take up residence in this vessel." I looked at my hands. They felt normal. But I remembered the dream, remembered them not being mine. "I'm leaving right now," I said. I packed in 5 minutes, threw everything in the Jeep. It was 4 a.m., still dark. But I didn't care. I needed to get away from Chloride, away from that church. I checked out. The old man at the desk just nodded, unsurprised that I was leaving early. The drive back should have taken 5 hours, but something was wrong with my sense of direction. Roads I knew I'd taken on the way in didn't look right. Signs were where they shouldn't be. At one point, I swore I passed the same gas station 3 times, and I kept losing time. I'd be driving, and then suddenly I'd be parked on the shoulder, with no memory of stopping. Once, I woke up standing outside my Jeep on an empty stretch of road, looking back the way I'd come, though I had no memory of getting out. It took me 11 hours to get back to Phoenix, 11 hours for a 5-hour drive, and I can't account for 6 of those hours. There are gaps in my memory, holes where time should be. When I finally got to my apartment, my roommate took one look at me and started crying. She said I looked different, wrong, like I was wearing my own face, but it didn't fit right anymore. That was 3 weeks ago. I haven't been right since. I lose time regularly now. I'll be working on something, and then suddenly it's hours later, and I'm somewhere else. My roommate says I have conversations with her that I don't remember. Sometimes she records them. Sometimes I'm speaking English. Sometimes I'm speaking that other language, that reversed Latin. And I'm not alone in here anymore. I can feel it. Someone else, something else, sharing my space. Not controlling me, not yet, but present. Watching through my eyes, listening through my ears, learning. My photographs won't delete. I've tried. Every time I erase them from my camera, they reappear. And there are new ones now. Photos I don't remember taking. My apartment at night. My roommate sleeping. The view from my window at different times of day. Like someone's documenting my life the way I documented that church. I researched Chloride. The church was abandoned in 1965 after what local records vaguely describe as an incident during services. 23 congregants went missing that Sunday. Just vanished from the church during Mass. Nobody was ever found. No bodies, no evidence, no explanation. The church was closed and never reopened. I think I know what happened to them. I think they're still there. Not as ghosts. As something else, waiting. And they meet. They still meet in that church, holding their services in the spaces between real and unreal. And they invited me to join them. And like an idiot, I accepted. I didn't know I was accepting, but I took their pictures. I documented their symbols. I stood in their circle. And in that dream, in that more than dream, I sang with them. Now they're inside me. Or something is, and I don't know how to make it leave. My roommate wants me to see a doctor, a priest, an exorcist. I've tried all 3. The doctor says I'm having a stress-induced psychotic break and prescribed antipsychotics that don't help. The priest refused to perform an exorcism because I'm not Catholic. The exorcist I found online took my money and burned some sage and told me I was cleansed. I wasn't. Because every night I go back, not physically, but in dreams that aren't dreams. I stand in that church with the congregation that isn't there, and I sing with them in a language I don't know, and every time I do, they get stronger, more present, and I get weaker, less myself. My roommate counted yesterday. She says I lost 7 hours. I don't remember them. She says I spent them sitting at my desk, staring at my laptop, where all those photos are displayed in a slideshow, just sitting there, watching, not blinking, for 7 straight hours. She's scared of me now. I can see it in her eyes. She's looking for a new place to live. She's leaving, and I don't blame her, because I'm leaving too, not by choice. Whatever took up residence in me, whatever I invited in, it's taking over. Slowly, steadily, 1 hour at a time, one memory at a time. Soon there won't be enough of Griffin left to resist. And I think, when that happens, I'll go back to Chloride, back to that church, and I'll join the others. Not as a photographer documenting them, as one of them, standing in those pews, singing those songs, waiting for the next person stupid enough to interrupt a service that never ended. I'm writing this as a warning. If you're into urban exploration, abandoned places, ghost towns, stay away from Chloride's church. It's not abandoned. It's very, very occupied. And whatever meets there, they're always looking for new members. And they're patient. They'll wait decades for someone to walk through those doors. And when you do, they'll welcome you. They'll invite you in, and you won't even know you've said yes until it's too late. Subscribe to Haunted Fears to hear more stories of places that should stay forgotten. And to my Haunted Fears horror family, some buildings are abandoned for a reason. Some doors should stay closed, and some photographs capture more than images. The woman across the street waved at me from her porch this morning, which would have been normal if I hadn't helped bury her in 2019. Her smile was exactly the same, her floral dress just like she used to wear, and she even called out, "Good morning, Holden." In that voice, I thought I'd never hear again. My name is Holden, and I've lived in this small community outside Wickenburg, Arizona, my entire life. Our neighborhood isn't even big enough to have a proper name. 23 houses scattered along Ocotillo Road, a dirt path that winds through the desert for about 2 miles before connecting to the highway. Everyone knows everyone. We've had cookouts together, helped each other through droughts and storms, buried each other's loved ones. That kind of close. The woman across the street died 6 years ago. Heart attack. I was one of the pallbearers at her funeral. I watched them lower her casket into the ground at the cemetery 15 miles away. I saw her house sit empty for 3 years, until a young couple from California bought it last spring. Except this morning, she was standing on that porch. And she wasn't a ghost. She was solid, real, casting a shadow in the morning sun. She was watering the flowers she used to keep in hanging baskets, humming the same hymn she always hummed. I stood frozen in my driveway, grocery bags in hand. She waved again, more insistent this time. "You feeling all right, Holden? You look like you've seen a ghost." Then she laughed, that same wheezing laugh she had when she thought something was particularly funny. I got in my truck and drove, didn't even put the groceries away. Just drove to the highway, pulled into a gas station and sat there shaking for 20 minutes. Then I called my neighbor 2 houses down, the one I'd known since high school. "Did you see the woman across from me this morning?" I asked. "Who?" "The house with the blue shutters. The new couple lives there. I think the wife was out front." "Why?" "What's her name?" "I don't know. Haven't really talked to them much." "Does she look about 70? Gray hair, floral dresses?" "Holden, the woman who lives there is maybe 30. Are you okay?" I drove back home slowly. When I passed the house, she was gone, but I could see movement through the windows. Normal activity, like someone living their normal life. Over the next few days, I tried to avoid that part of the road. Took the long way out, even though it added 15 minutes. But I started noticing other things. The mailman, the old one who'd retired 5 years ago after a stroke left him partially paralyzed, was back on his route. Walking perfectly fine, like he'd never been sick. He delivered my mail with the same jokes he used to tell. Remembered how I liked my packages left under the porch overhang. I asked him directly, "Didn't you retire?" He looked confused. "Retire? I'm only 48. Got another decade in me at least." But he was 63 when he retired. I knew because we'd thrown him a party. Then I saw the teenager 3 houses down, the one who died in a car accident 7 years ago, just 17 when he wrapped his truck around a telephone pole. But there he was, washing a truck in his driveway, music playing, moving with that same cocky confidence he'd had. His parents had moved away 2 years after his death. Couldn't stand living in the house where he'd grown up. But now their truck was in the driveway again, both of them. And their son was alive. I started keeping notes. Every person who died or moved away from Ocotillo Road in the past decade. I wrote down their descriptions, when I'd last seen them alive, how they'd died, or where they'd moved. The list grew longer every day, because more kept coming back. The couple from the corner house who divorced and sold their place in 2018, they were back together, acting like newlyweds. The old veteran who died from emphysema in 2020. I saw him jogging down the road, breathing perfectly. The family that moved to Oregon for work in 2021. All 5 of them were back, settling in like they'd never left. But here's what made my skin crawl. None of them remembered leaving or dying. When I tried to talk to them about it, they looked at me like I was crazy. The woman across the street told me she'd lived in that house for 40 years straight, never left once. The mailman insisted he'd been on the same route his entire career. The teenager's parents had no memory of his death or their years away. I talked to the other longtime residents, the ones who'd been here as long as me. Only 3 of us left who remembered the truth. We met at my house one night, doors locked, curtains drawn. It's not just us noticing, right? The woman from down the road, in her 70s, was shaking. I buried my husband 8 years ago, but he's been sleeping next to me for the past week, acting like everything's normal. He doesn't remember being dead. The other man, a rancher who'd lived here 50 years, nodded. My daughter moved to Phoenix in 2019, but she's back, living in her old room. She's 28, but acting like she's 19 again, like those 9 years never happened. And the scary thing is, I'm starting to forget too. Sometimes I look at her, and I can't remember if she ever left. That's when I understood. It wasn't just them forgetting. It was us too. The timeline was being rewritten, and we were being forced to accept the new version. I decided to leave. Packed a bag that night, got in my truck at dawn. But when I reached the end of Ocotillo Road, I couldn't turn onto the highway. Not physically. I couldn't. My hands wouldn't turn the wheel. My foot wouldn't press the gas. I sat there for an hour, trying, and I just couldn't make myself leave. When I drove back, everyone waved. Normal smiles, normal greetings, like they knew I'd tried to leave and knew I couldn't. That night, I heard someone in my house, in my living room, moving around. I grabbed the pistol from my bedside table and crept downstairs. The lights were on. Someone was sitting in my armchair, reading my newspaper. It was my brother. My brother who died in Iraq in 2007. He looked up and smiled. "Hey, Holden, you're up late." I couldn't speak, couldn't move. He was wearing his Marine's uniform, just like the last time I'd seen him before his deployment. Young, healthy, alive. "What's wrong?" he asked. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "You're dead," I whispered. "You died 18 years ago." His expression didn't change. "What are you talking about?" "I'm right here. I came home on leave last week. You picked me up from the airport, remember?" I didn't remember that. But even as I thought it, I could see the memory forming. Me at the airport. Him walking through arrivals. The hug. The drive home. It felt real. It was becoming real. "No," I said. "No, that's not what happened. You need some sleep, brother. You've been working too hard." He stood, patted my shoulder as he walked past. "I'm staying in the guest room. We'll talk in the morning." I listened to him walk upstairs, heard the guest room door close. I stood in my living room until sunrise, unable to process what was happening. The next day, I drove to the cemetery where the woman was buried, where my brother was buried. The plots were empty, not freshly dug, empty like they'd never been filled. Fresh grass growing over dirt that had supposedly been disturbed years ago. The headstones were gone. I went to the records office, asked for death certificates, for obituaries. They couldn't find anything. Are you sure about the names? We have no record of these people dying. I went home and looked through my old photos. Pictures of funerals, pictures of moving trucks when neighbors left. All of them were gone. In their place were photos I didn't remember taking. Birthday parties, holidays, everyone alive, everyone together. The three of us who remembered met one last time. We were going to leave together, force ourselves somehow. But when we gathered at the meeting spot, there were only two of us. The rancher didn't show. I drove to his house. He was there, working in his yard, his daughter helping him. "What are you doing?" I asked. "We were supposed to meet." He looked confused. "Meet? I don't know what you're talking about. We barely know each other. I've seen you around, but we've never been close." His daughter smiled at me. That same smile I'd seen on the woman across the street. On my brother. On all of them. Not menacing. Just knowing. The woman and I tried to leave again. This time, when we reached the end of Ocotillo Road, she couldn't drive forward either. We sat in her car, trapped by nothing we could see or fight against. "It's the road," she said. "Or the community. Something about this place. It's not letting anyone leave. And it's bringing everyone back. All the people who were supposed to be here. Making it like nobody ever died or left." "But why?" She looked at me with tears in her eyes. "Because it's lonely. Because places die too when people leave. And this place doesn't want to die. That was 2 months ago. I see them every day now. All the dead, all the departed, living their lives like nothing ever happened. And here's the thing that terrifies me most. I'm starting to forget too. Sometimes I look at my brother and I can't remember him being gone. Sometimes I pass the woman's house and the memory of her funeral feels like a dream, not real, not something that actually happened. The timeline is solidifying around the new version. Soon, none of us will remember the truth. We'll all just be here, living on Ocotillo Road, and it'll be like the deaths never happened, like no one ever left, perfect and preserved and trapped. New people still move in sometimes. They never last long. Either they leave within weeks, or they start to change, start to fit the pattern, start to forget who they were before they came here. I keep this journal hidden. I write down what I remember while I still remember it. But it's getting harder. Yesterday, I couldn't remember what year my brother died. This morning, I couldn't remember if the woman ever actually died, or if I dreamed it. Soon, I won't remember it all. Soon, I'll just be Holden, living on Ocotillo Road, surrounded by neighbors who've been here forever. And I'll wave at everyone and smile and never think about the fact that half of them are supposed to be dead. The road keeps them. The road brings them back. And soon, when I die, the road will bring me back too. And I'll return to my house like I never left. And someone else will remember I died, but they won't be able to leave either. And eventually they'll forget too. We're all being written into a story that never ends. A community that refuses to die. And there's no way out. Subscribe to Haunted Fears for more stories of places that won't let go. And to my Haunted Fears horror family, if you move to a small town and the neighbors seem too perfect, too familiar, too permanent, maybe there's a reason nobody ever leaves. The thing wearing my husband's face kept asking to be let in, but his voice was coming from 3 inches behind the door instead of head height. I bought the necklace against every warning, and now something wants it back, or wants me. My name is Isabella, and I made the worst mistake of my life at a remote trading post between Tuba City and Kayenta. We'd been driving cross-country for 3 days when we decided to take the scenic route through the Navajo Nation. My husband had always wanted to see Monument Valley, and I figured we'd make a whole trip out of it. Get off the beaten path, see the real Arizona, not just the tourist version. The trading post wasn't on our GPS. We found it by accident after taking a wrong turn on a network of unmarked dirt roads. Just a small building sitting alone in the desert, miles from anything, with a few trucks parked outside and a hand-painted sign that said, "Jewelry Crafts, Gas." We needed gas. Our tank was getting low, and we hadn't seen a station in an hour, so we pulled in. The place was dim inside, crowded with shelves of pottery, rugs, and jewelry. Beautiful stuff, the kind of authentic native crafts you don't find in Phoenix gift shops. An old man sat behind the counter, not looking up when we entered. My husband went to ask about gas while I browsed. That's when I saw the necklace. It was stunning. Silver with turquoise stones, intricate patterns, clearly old. It sat in a locked glass case by itself, separate from the other jewelry. I called the old man over. "How much for this one?" He looked at it, then at me, and his expression changed. "Not for sale. But it's in the display case." "Not for sale," he repeated, firmer this time. Something about being told no made me want it more. "I'll pay whatever you're asking." The old man studied me for a long moment. "That piece. It's been here a long time, waiting for someone, but not you. You shouldn't take it." "Why not?" "Because it doesn't belong out there. It belongs here, contained." I should have listened, should have thanked him and walked away. But I'd had a few drinks with lunch, felt bold, felt like I was on an adventure. "If it's not for sale, why is it on display?" He sighed, a deep, weary sound. "So people can see it, so they know it's here, but not so they take it. That doesn't make sense." "It doesn't have to make sense to you. You're not from here. You don't understand what some things are." That irritated me. The condescension, the mysticism. I pulled out my credit card. "Name your price." He looked at the necklace again, then back at me. Something like resignation crossed his face. $300. But when you realize your mistake, you can't bring it back. Understand? Once you take it, it's yours. All the way yours. I paid. He wrapped it slowly, like he was giving me time to change my mind. I didn't. I put the necklace on as soon as we got back to the car. My husband asked, "What did that old guy mean about not bringing it back?" "Just trying to make it seem more mysterious. Sales tactic." We drove another 3 hours to our hotel in Kayenta. The necklace was heavy around my neck, but I liked the weight of it. Substantial. Real. That night, around 2 a.m., someone knocked on our hotel door. I woke up confused. My husband was already getting out of bed, pulling on a shirt. "Who the hell knocks at 2 a.m.? He looked through the peephole. "It's a woman. Native woman. Looks upset." He opened the door. She was old, maybe 70, wearing traditional dress. She looked at me, specifically at my neck, where the necklace rested. "You need to take that off." "Excuse me." "That necklace. Take it off. Give it to me. I'll return it for you." My husband stepped between us. "Ma'am, I don't know who you are, but you can't just show up at 2 a.m. demanding—" "You don't understand what she's wearing, where she got it, what it is." "It's a necklace," I said. "I bought it." "It's not just a necklace, it's a binding, and you've activated it by wearing it. Please, before it's too late, give it to me." Something about her desperation made me uneasy, but I'd paid $300 for this. I wasn't handing it to some random woman at my hotel door. "I think you need to leave." She looked at me with something like pity. "Then I'm sorry for what's coming. It'll start tonight, and every night it'll get closer, until it's close enough to take you instead of the necklace." My husband closed the door. We stood there, both shaken. "Should we call the front desk?" he asked. Let's just go back to sleep." But I couldn't sleep. I lay there, the necklace heavy on my chest, listening to the silence. Around 3 a.m. I heard it. Footsteps in the hallway outside our room. Slow, measured, stopping at our door. Then silence. Then knocking. 3 soft knocks. My husband was asleep. I stayed still, hoping whoever it was would leave. The knocking came again. 3 knocks, slightly louder. Then a voice. My husband's voice. "Honey, I locked myself out. Can you let me in?" But my husband was right next to me, asleep, breathing steadily. The voice outside spoke again, exactly like my husband. "Isabella, are you awake? I need you to open the door." I didn't move, didn't breathe. The doorknob rattled, then stopped. Footsteps walking away. In the morning, I convinced myself I'd dreamed it. Stress, unfamiliar place, too much to drink earlier. We checked out and continued our trip. That night, at a different hotel in Flagstaff, it happened again. 3 a.m. Footsteps, knocking. My husband's voice asking to be let in, but my husband was asleep beside me. This time, I got up, crept to the door, looked through the peephole. A man stood in the hallway. He looked like my husband. Same height, same build, wearing my husband's clothes. But something was wrong with him. The proportions weren't quite right. The arms too long. The head sitting wrong on the shoulders. And his voice, my husband's voice, was coming from lower than it should. Like his mouth was at chest height even though his head was at the right level. "I can see you looking," the thing said in my husband's voice. "I know you're there. Just let me in. We can talk about the necklace." I backed away from the door. The thing knocked again, harder. Then it was silent. When I looked again, the hallway was empty. The next day, I tried to take the necklace off. The clasp wouldn't open. I pulled at it, used tools from my husband's travel kit, tried cutting the chain. Nothing worked. The silver was somehow harder than it should be. The tools skipped off it like it was stone. My husband finally believed me after the 3rd night. We'd driven to Sedona, and at 3 a.m. the knocking came again. This time, both of us went to the peephole. The thing looked more like my husband now. The proportions were closer, but the eyes were wrong, too reflective. And when it spoke, the mouth didn't move quite right with the words. "Please let me in. I just want to talk about what you took, about what needs to return." My husband's voice, his exact cadence, but coming from this thing that was wearing his appearance like an ill-fitting suit. "We need to go back to that trading post," my husband said. "Now. Tonight." We drove through the night. It took 6 hours to retrace our route back to where we thought the trading post was, but we couldn't find it. The roads looked wrong. The landmarks we'd remembered weren't there. We drove until sunrise, searching, but the trading post had vanished. When we got back to our hotel, exhausted, we found the old woman from the first night sitting in the lobby. She looked at us, unsurprised. "You can't find it. The trading post isn't always there. It moves, or we move. The geography isn't fixed when it comes to places like that." "What is this?" I demanded. "What is this thing following us?" "It's what was bound to the necklace, what the necklace was made to contain. The trader who sold it to you, he knew. His family has been keeping it there for generations, keeping it in a place between places. But you took it out. You activated the binding by wearing it. And now what was contained is free to follow. What does it want?" "The necklace back, or you as a replacement. Something has to be bound. That's how it works." "How do we return it?" She shook her head. "You can't. Not now. The trading post won't appear for you again. It knows what you did. You're marked." "Then what do we do?" "You run. You keep moving. It can follow you, but it's slow. As long as you don't stay in one place too long, it can't catch up." "For how long?" She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The answer was forever. That was 8 months ago. We haven't stopped moving. We drive at night, sleep during the day in different hotels, never the same place twice. Every night at 3 a.m., wherever we are, it comes. It knocks. It wears my husband's face and uses his voice and asks to be let in. and it's getting better at being him. The proportions are almost right now. The voice is perfect. Sometimes I look at my actual husband and can't tell if he's the real one or if the thing has finally gotten inside somehow. The necklace never comes off. I've tried everything. Jewelers, metalworkers, even tried acid. Nothing touches it. It's become part of me, and I'm becoming part of whatever curse it carries. We're tired. So tired. My husband wants to stop running. He says maybe we should just let it in, see what happens. Maybe it'll take the necklace and leave. But I remember what the old woman said. The necklace, or me. Something has to be bound. I don't know how much longer we can do this. How much longer before we make a mistake, stay too long in one place, fall asleep too deeply. Every night it gets a little closer to being perfect. A little closer to being exactly like my husband. And when it's close enough, when it can fool me completely, that's when it'll get in. I should have listened. Should have walked away from that trading post. Should have respected the old man's warning. But I didn't. And now I'm paying for it, a 1-3 a.m. visit at a time. Subscribe to Haunted Fears to hear more stories of boundaries that shouldn't be crossed. And to my Haunted Fears horror family, if someone tells you something isn't for sale, maybe they're not trying to manipulate you. Maybe they're trying to save you. The bar's security camera showed me standing at the window for 6 straight hours, not blinking once, while my hand slowly wrote coordinates on the glass in backwards letters. I don't remember any of it. My name is Jasper, and I'm a bartender at the Spirit Room in Jerome, Arizona, the town that clings to the side of Cleopatra Hill like it's trying not to fall off. Jerome isn't like other towns, built into a mountain, houses stacked on top of each other, streets so steep your car rolls backwards if you forget the parking brake. It used to be a mining town, biggest copper camp in Arizona, but the mines closed decades ago. Now it's artists and tourists, and people like me who work the bars and shops that keep the place alive. The Spirit Room is one of the oldest bars in Arizona. Been here since 1899, though the building's changed hands and names over the years. I've worked there for 3 years, mostly closing shifts. I like the quiet after everyone leaves. Just me and the ghosts, and Jerome's got plenty of those, or so the stories say. Tuesday night started normal. Decent crowd for a weeknight. Locals mixed with tourists who'd driven up the mountain to see the most vertical town in America. I served drinks, made small talk, cleaned glasses. The usual routine. Last call was at midnight. By 12:45, everyone was out. I locked the doors, started my closing duties. That's when I saw the light. I was wiping down the bar when the whole room lit up. Not normal light. This was different. Bright, but not harsh. White with a blue tinge, like moonlight, amplified 1,000 times. It was coming through the window that faces the valley. I walked to the window. Down below, the valley was dark except for a few scattered lights from Cottonwood and Clarkdale. But hovering above the valley, maybe a mile out, was the source. A light, massive, perfectly circular, silent, just hanging there in the night sky. I should have been scared, should have called someone. But I couldn't look away. The light was beautiful, hypnotic. I pressed my hand against the window glass, feeling the coolness against my palm. The light pulsed, slowly, rhythmically, like it was breathing. That's the last thing I remember clearly. The next thing I knew, I was sitting in my car in the parking lot. The sun was rising. My neck hurt from sleeping in a weird position. I was disoriented, confused. Why was I in my car? Had I decided to sleep here instead of driving home? I checked my phone. 6:47 a.m. I'd closed the bar around 1 a.m. That meant 7 hours had passed, but I had no memory of any of it. No memory of finishing closing duties, setting the alarm, locking up, walking to my car. Nothing. Just a blank space where hours should have been. I felt wrong. My body felt wrong. Like I'd been running or working out, muscles sore, skin sensitive. I looked down at my arms. There were marks, thin, red lines, perfectly straight, running from my wrist to my elbows. Not cuts, more like burns. 3 on. Each arm, evenly spaced, geometric. I pulled up my shirt. More marks. On my torso, my sides. Symmetrical patterns. Like someone had measured and marked me with precision. I started shaking. What the hell had happened? Had I hurt myself? Blacked out? But I didn't drink on shift. Never did. And these marks, they didn't look self-inflicted. They looked deliberate, purposeful, done by someone else. I drove home, showered, tried to make sense of it. The marks didn't wash away. They weren't on the surface. They were in my skin, like they'd been burned there from underneath. I covered them with long sleeves, tried to ignore them. But I couldn't ignore the memory gap. 7 hours. Gone. What had I done during that time? I went back to the bar that afternoon. My boss was there, doing inventory. "Hey, you okay?" she asked. "You look rough." "Didn't sleep well. Listen, did I lock up properly last night? I'm having trouble remembering." She frowned. "You tell me. Everything was locked when I got here this morning. Alarm was set. Cash drawer balanced, but what? Come look at this." She led me to the main window, the one that faces the valley. On the glass, written in what looked like condensed water vapor or grease, though it was too precise to be either, were numbers and letters, coordinates, latitude and longitude. But they were written backwards, mirror-imaged, like someone had written them from inside the bar facing out instead of from outside facing in. "Any idea what this is?" she asked. I stared at the coordinates. I didn't recognize them, didn't know why they'd be there. "No idea. I'll clean it off. Also, the security camera caught something weird. You should watch the footage." My stomach dropped. What kind of weird? "Just watch it." She pulled up the security footage on the office computer, queued up to 12:52 a.m., right after I'd locked the doors. On screen, I watched myself walk to the window, stand there, and then nothing. I just stood there for 6 hours and 17 minutes, according to the timestamp, standing at the window, completely motionless, not shifting weight, not scratching an itch, not blinking, just staring out at the valley. And my right hand, raised to the glass, was slowly, so slowly, writing those coordinates. Backwards. My fingers moved with mechanical precision, tracing each number and letter perfectly. But I wasn't looking at what I was writing. I was staring straight ahead, eyes unfocused, at something in the distance. At 7:09 a.m., I suddenly blinked, looked around like I was confused, and walked out of frame toward the back door. "What the hell?" I whispered. "Yeah," my boss said. "What the hell? You feeling okay? Because that's not normal. That's not even close to normal. I don't remember any of it. Maybe you should see a doctor. Could be a seizure or something. Neurological. Maybe." But I knew it wasn't. The marks on my body, the light I'd seen, the coordinates written backwards. This wasn't medical. This was something else. I took a photo of the coordinates before cleaning them off. Went home and looked them up. They pointed to a location in the valley below Jerome. Middle of nowhere. Empty desert scrubland. No buildings, no roads, just vacant land. I don't know what made me decide to go there. Curiosity, maybe. Or something else. Something deeper. Like a compulsion. Like those coordinates were a message meant specifically for me. I drove down the mountain that evening after my shift. Followed the coordinates using my phone's GPS. The location was about 40 minutes from Jerome, off a dirt access road that barely qualified as a road. I parked where the GPS said I'd arrived and got out. Nothing, just desert. Creosote bushes, rocks, empty sky. I walked around looking for what? I didn't even know. A sign. Evidence. Something that would explain what had happened to me. That's when I saw it. On the ground. A circle of scorched earth, maybe 30 feet in diameter. The dirt was blackened, fused in places like it had been exposed to intense heat. In the center of the circle, the sand had turned to glass, melted, and re-solidified. And in that glass were impressions, shapes, like someone had pressed objects into the sand before it cooled. I knelt down, touched the glass. It was perfectly smooth. And the shapes, there were 3 of them, evenly spaced in a triangle, each about the size of a human body. But the proportions were wrong, too long. Arms and legs that didn't match human anatomy. I felt sick, dizzy. The marks on my body burned suddenly, intensely, like they were reacting to being near this place. I stumbled back to my car, drove away faster than I should have on that rough road. Back in Jerome, I tried to go about my life normally, worked my shifts, smiled at customers, pretended everything was fine, but I couldn't stop thinking about that glass circle, those impressions, the 6 hours I'd lost. And the marks weren't fading. If anything, they were becoming more prominent. The lines were darkening, becoming raised. Like scars, except they hadn't been cuts. Like brands, except they hadn't been burns. A week after the incident, it happened again. I was closing the bar, same routine. Around 1 a.m., I looked out the window, and there it was, the light. Back again, hovering in the exact same spot over the valley. This time, I tried to fight it, tried to look away, tried to run to the back office, get away from the window, but my body wouldn't obey. My legs carried me to the window, my hand pressed against the glass, and I felt it happening again, that pulling sensation, like my consciousness was being separated from my body, like something was reaching into my mind and pressing pause on everything that made me, me. The next morning, I woke up in my car again. More marks, more coordinates on the window, more missing time. I checked the security footage, 6 hours, standing, staring, writing backwards. This has happened 4 more times since then, always when I'm closing alone, always the same pattern. I've tried calling out sick on those nights, but I can't. Something makes me go to work. Something makes me stay until closing. Something makes me stand at that window. The marks cover most of my body now. Geometric patterns, all symmetrical, all burned into my skin from the inside out. I wear long sleeves and high-necked shirts to hide them. People are starting to notice something's wrong. My boss keeps suggesting I take time off, see a specialist. But I can't leave, can't quit. Whatever is happening to me isn't finished yet. I went back to that scorched circle in the valley. It's changed. The glass has grown. The circle is bigger. And the impressions, there are more of them now. 6 total. 3 of the wrong proportion shapes, and 3 human-sized. Recent. One of them matches my body perfectly. I think I know what's happening. Every time I lose those hours, every time I stand at that window and write coordinates, I'm being taken. Not all of me. Just parts, copies, impressions. Like I'm being scanned, documented, recorded. The marks are a map. I realized that last night. When I trace them with my fingers, they form patterns that match the star formations visible from Jerome. Specific constellations, specific alignments. It's not just marking me. It's encoding something into me. I tried to tell someone, went to the police, tried to file a report. But when I opened my mouth to explain, different words came out. Coordinates. Just coordinates. Strings of numbers and letters that meant nothing to the officer but everything to whatever is doing this to me. I'm writing this now while I still can, while my thoughts are still my own, because I can feel it changing. Every time I lose those hours, I come back a little different, a little less me. My coworkers say I talk differently now, move differently. My boss says sometimes I answer questions in a language she doesn't recognize. Tonight, I'm closing again. I know what's going to happen. The light will come. I'll stand at the window. I'll lose more hours. And when I come back this time, if I come back, I might not remember who Jasper was. Might not remember this bar, this town, this life. Whatever is taking me, it's almost done. The marks are nearly complete. The encoding is almost finished. And when it's done, when every inch of my skin carries their message, I don't think I'll be human anymore. I'll be something else. Something that looks like me but isn't. To whoever reads this, if you're ever in Jerome, if you're working late and you see a light over the valley, don't look at it. Don't go to the window. Don't let it see you. Because once it knows you're there, once it marks you, it won't stop until it's finished. Until you're not you anymore. Until you're just another impression in the glass, another set of coordinates, another message written backwards for something that isn't from here. Subscribe to Haunted Fears for more stories of skies that watch back. And to my Haunted Fears horror family, if you ever lose time and wake up with marks you can't explain, maybe don't go looking for answers. Some questions are invitations you don't want to accept. The woman at the gas pump said she'd been filling her tank for 3 days straight. And when I looked at the meter, it still read 0. The digital date on my phone flickered between years as shadows stretched across the empty highway. My name is Quinn, and on a drive through eastern Arizona, I learned some places are designed to keep you longer than you intend. Highway 191 runs between Clifton and Morenci, copper mines and desert bluffs, a lonely ribbon of blacktop twisting through the land. I was traveling late, returning from a solo hiking trip, the desert heat still humming in my bones. When my car's check engine light began to flicker outside Clifton, I pulled into the first rest stop I saw. An old service station, all peeling paint and faded logos, the kind you spot in abandoned road trip photo essays. The sign simply said, gas, snacks, air. But the lights above the pumps glowed, and a soft yellow neon open shone in the gathering dusk. There was something hopeful about it. Out here, even a vending machine feels like company. I stepped out. The desert wind carried a brittle silence. I didn't hear birds or traffic, only felt the presence of the shadowed station and the vastness pressing close. A woman was at the far pump, hands on the nozzle, staring dazed at the display. She didn't acknowledge me. Inside, the station smelled of hot plastic and dust. Coolers hummed somewhere out of sight. Rows of old snacks, crackers, barely branded soda, faded candy, lined the shelves. A clock above the counter showed 6:12, but whether AM or PM, I wasn't sure. The attendant, a young man, leaned on the counter, barely looked up. "Pump 3, please," I said. He blinked slowly, then nodded. I paid cash. The register displayed odd symbols for a moment. Not numbers then, but somehow numbers all the same. I chalked it up to the old machine. When I went back outside, the woman was still filling her car. Her eyes darted to me, glassy but desperate. "You're new, aren't you?" she whispered. "Yeah, just passing through." She glanced around. We all were. I shrugged it off, finished pumping. The numbers on my pump didn't change. I tried again. The fuel never filled. Time seemed to stutter. The sky was orange, then nearly dark, then a pale, sick daylight. My phone displayed March 2014, then March 2029, then blank. Returning inside, I found different people standing by the dirty windows. An elderly man, a family clutching each other, a couple blinking in disbelief. Everyone had the same look, hunger and confusion, and a sense they'd been here far too long. I tried to make a call. The line wouldn't connect, just static barking in my ear. I checked the payphone on the wall. Beside it hung dozens of torn, scribbled notes. Said goodbye to daylight 2 days ago. Can't leave. Wheels always end back here. Who's pumping at midnight? Answer, no one. By now, the core dread had settled deep in my chest. I tried to drive. Away. 10 minutes down the road, the gas station reappeared ahead, the same faces at the pumps, the same shadows. Every escape turned into return. One time, the trip lasted 20 minutes. The next, mere seconds. On the 5th try, it was suddenly night. The headlights barely sliced through the thick, unnatural darkness pressed beyond the highway. The digital clock blinked cryptic numbers. Inside the car now, I noticed the hunger. How time rippled inside me. Sometimes my hands looked older, sometimes younger. Sometimes my thoughts raced so fast I couldn't pin them down. Other times, I was sluggish, sunk in syrupy confusion. My face in the rear view kept shifting, beard grown, then gone, then patchy and wrong. My own voice sounded strange to me, out of tempo with my mouth's movement. I asked one of the others, a man in a torn jacket, how long he'd been here. Since the Reagan years, fam. At least I think so. Every 6 months I remember my mother's voice again, then forget it a little more. I dream somewhere else, but always wake up at these pumps. I joined a group in the station's corner. We made plans, escape as a team, drive separate directions, meet back at the city limit sign. But that sign never came. Whether walking, running, or driving, we ended back at the station or found the ground rippled unreal, time looping, always night or dusk or that ugly, endless afternoon. Sometimes travelers faded, their presence dimmed, their voices echoes, until I realized I hadn't seen the woman at the pump in a day. Her car was gone, pump hanging loose, a note left scrawled on the dash. I'll go on foot forever if I must, but I'll always start here. On the 7th attempt, I smashed the payphone, screaming at the static to give me a line out. It snapped back with one word, not a voice I recognized. Stay. Looking around, the snacks now showed different dates. My phone showed June. The signage read Socorro Service instead of the highway number. Time was caving in. Other travelers huddled closer to me. All of us, somewhere between decades and seconds alive, had become part of the inventory. Trapped objects ourselves. In the end, you choose what sort of fiction to believe. The old man started drawing circles with his foot, and I realized the stains on the floor had once been shoe prints, looping in long, dried gasoline. Sometimes people disappear. Sometimes they become shadows, reaching for the doors. Sometimes I think the road and the gas station are all that's left of the travelers now. Maybe some of us get out if we forget enough, or if the highway outside ever changes. But the way the pumps keep us returning, and the way our faces just fade from the glass, I think we're meant to stay. The highway's memory is longer than any of us, and it's always hungry for one more pit stop, one more story. If you see that yellow open sign glowing in a sea of nothing, keep driving. Some places don't want you to leave, until leaving isn't even a question anymore. Subscribe to Haunted Fears for more stories from Arizona's lost highways. And to my Haunted Fears horror family. Next time the world feels wrong at a roadside stop, ask how long you've been there really. Sometimes the journey never actually ends. This morning I found 12 new paintings in my studio, each one showing the same figure standing one step closer to my bedroom door. The last canvas was still wet. I don't remember painting any of them. My name is Lucian, and I moved to Tubac, Arizona 3 months ago to escape creative burnout and find inspiration in the desert silence. Tubac is an artist colony, a small community south of Tucson, known for galleries and studios tucked into old adobe buildings. It's peaceful here, quiet, the kind of place where people come to create without distraction. I rented a small house on the edge of town, 2 bedrooms, thick adobe walls, a covered patio with views of the Santa Rita Mountains. One bedroom became my studio. The other, my bedroom. Simple. Perfect for focusing on my work. I'm a painter. Was a painter. Am trying to be a painter again. I'd been successful in Phoenix. Gallery shows, commissions, a decent income from my art. But 2 years ago, I hit a wall. Couldn't paint. Couldn't even sketch. Every time I tried, my mind went blank. Creative block, they call it. So I came here, hoping the change of scenery would help. For the first month, nothing changed. I'd set up my easel, stare at blank canvas, feel nothing. No inspiration, no drive, just empty whiteness, mocking me. I walked through Tubac's galleries, looked at other artists' work, felt jealous and inadequate. They could create. I couldn't. Then, about 6 weeks ago, something shifted. I woke up one morning and felt it. That familiar pull, that need to paint. I went to my studio, picked up my brush, and started working. The painting came easily, naturally, like the block had never existed. I painted all day, lost in the flow I'd been missing for 2 years. When I stepped back to look at what I'd created, I felt confused. The painting showed my living room, but from an angle I'd never used, like someone standing in the corner looking at the couch and fireplace. The perspective was wrong, too low, too tilted. But the detail was incredible. Every texture, every shadow, perfectly rendered. I didn't remember choosing that subject, didn't remember planning the composition, but I'd painted it. My brush, my style, my technique. The next night, I woke up around 3 a.m. with paint on my hands, blue and ochre, dried into my fingerprints. I went to the studio. Another painting sat on a fresh canvas. My kitchen, same strange low angle, same uncomfortable perspective, like someone crouching in the corner, watching. This became a pattern. I'd go to bed clean, wake up with paint-stained hands, find a new painting in the studio. Always the same style. Always my house. Always that wrong perspective, like someone hiding in corners, observing from strange angles. After 2 weeks, I had 17 paintings. All interior shots of my house, living room, kitchen, bathroom, hallway. Each from a different corner, different shadow, different hiding place. I should have been thrilled. I was creating again, producing work after 2 years of nothing. But I wasn't thrilled. I was unsettled, because I didn't remember painting any of them. I'd wake up exhausted, like I'd been working all night, but I had no memory of it. No recollection of mixing colors, applying brushstrokes, making creative decisions. Just blank spaces where hours should be, and finished paintings that appeared in my studio like gifts from someone else. I tried staying awake, fought sleep, but around 2 or 3 a.m., I'd feel overwhelming drowsiness, impossible to resist. I'd wake up at dawn with more paintings. The paintings started to disturb me, because I noticed something. In each one, in the corner or shadow where the perspective originated, there was a shape, subtle, easy to miss, just a darkness slightly darker than the surrounding shadows. But once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. Something was in those corners, in those hiding places, something that watched. I painted over the first few canvases, tried to destroy that evidence, but the next night I created more, and these were worse, because the figure, I was certain it was a figure now, was clearer, still mostly shadow, but with suggestions of form. A head, shoulders, arms too long to be human. I stopped sleeping in the house, started sleeping in my car in the driveway, doors locked, hoping that would stop the nocturnal painting. It didn't. I'd wake up in the car exhausted, go inside to find new paintings waiting. My studio had become a gallery of surveillance, my own house, documented from every shadow, every corner, every hiding place, and in each painting, that figure grew clearer. By the 4th week, the paintings showed it in detail. Tall, impossibly thin, with skin like cracked adobe. Its eyes were hollow spaces, its mouth too wide, its fingers too long, with too many joints. And it was always in the corner, watching from shadow, documenting my space the way a predator studies prey. I tried leaving Tubac, packed my things, got in my car, but I couldn't drive away. Every time I tried, I'd feel that drowsiness, that overwhelming need to sleep. I'd wake up back in the house, in my bed, with paint on my hands and new paintings in the studio. The paintings changed again. They still showed my house, but now they showed me. Me sleeping, me eating, me standing at the window looking out, me brushing my teeth, me sitting on the couch reading, every moment of my day captured from those corner perspectives, those hiding place angles. It was documenting me, whatever was making me paint. It was using me to document myself, to create a record of my presence, my routine, my vulnerability. Last week, the painting started showing something new. The figure wasn't in the corners anymore. It was closer. In the paintings, it stood in the middle of the room, behind the couch, In the hallway. Approaching. Each night's painting showed it one step closer to my bedroom. One painting for each step, each approach, each invasion of space. And I painted them all. My hand, my skill. Used to document my own stalking. 3 nights ago, I woke up to find the figure at my bedroom door in the paintings. Not inside yet, just at the threshold. Waiting. 2 nights ago, the painting showed it inside my bedroom, standing at the foot of my bed, looking down at me sleeping. Last night, the painting showed it reaching toward me. This morning, I found 12 paintings, each showing the figure one step closer to my bedroom door. The progression was clear, documenting its approach, its entry, its arrival. The 12th painting was still wet, glistening, recently finished. I touched the wet paint. It was warm. I'd been painting minutes ago, but I had no memory of it. I looked at the 12th painting closely. The figure stood at my bedroom door, hand reaching for the handle. But there was something else in the painting. Something I'd painted without realizing. In the background, visible through my bedroom window, was my car in the driveway. And sitting in the car, visible through the window, was me. Awake, watching. I ran outside to my car, got in, looked at the house. My bedroom window was there. But I couldn't see inside. The angle was wrong, the curtains closed. But I'd painted it. Somehow I'd painted myself sitting in this car, watching the house at the exact moment the figure reached my bedroom door. Which meant I looked at my hands, still had paint on them. Blue and ochre, the same colors as always. I touched my face. There was paint there too, on my cheeks, my forehead. Like someone had been touching me with painted hands. I started the car. This time, I didn't feel drowsy. Maybe because it was morning. Maybe because whatever was happening had reached its conclusion. I drove out of Tubac, onto the highway, heading north. I made it 30 miles before I had to stop. Not because of drowsiness, because I saw something in the rearview mirror. In the back seat of my car, barely visible, was a shape. Long, thin, watching me with hollow eyes. I pulled over, got out, looked in the back seat. Nothing there, empty. But on the seat, drawn in dust on the leather, were marks, like someone had traced designs with a long finger. Patterns I recognized. The same geometric patterns I'd been painting in the backgrounds of my work for years. My signature style, my unique artistic flourish. I got back in the car, kept driving, but I could feel it now. In the car with me, not visible, not touchable, but present, like it had always been present. Like it had been with me in Phoenix, too, hiding in the corners of my old studio, waiting in shadows, watching as I worked. Maybe it was the source of my talent. Maybe it had always been there, feeding me ideas, guiding my brush, making me successful. And when I moved away from Phoenix, it followed. Because it wasn't attached to a place. It was attached to me. Or maybe I was attached to it. Maybe I'd invited it in years ago without realizing. Drawn it into my life through my art, through my obsessive need to create, through the long hours alone in studios talking to shadows and calling it inspiration. I'm still driving. I don't know where I'm going. The paintings are in the trunk, all of them. Every canvas I'd created in Tubac. I couldn't leave them behind. They're evidence, proof that something was there, even if I can't see it now. But sometimes, when I look in the rearview mirror, I see movement, a shift in shadows, a suggestion of form, and I know that whatever made me paint those pictures, whatever documented my life from corners and shadows, it's still with me, still watching, still waiting. Tonight, when I stop at a motel, when I finally have to sleep, I wonder what I'll paint, what corners of this new room it'll document, what angles it'll use, what progression it'll show, because I know I'll wake up with paint on my hands. I know there will be new canvases, and I know that eventually the paintings will show what comes after the reaching, what happens when the figure at the bedroom door doesn't just stand there, when it crosses the threshold, when it stops documenting and starts claiming, I'm an artist, I create. But I think something has been creating through me for a long time, using my hands, my eyes, my skill to document its presence, its approach, its inevitable arrival. And I don't think I can stop painting any more than I can stop being watched. Because the two are the same thing now. To create is to document my own haunting. To paint is to map my own possession. The desert stretches ahead. Empty highway, endless space. But I'm not alone. I'm never alone anymore. And somewhere in the back seat, in the trunk, in the shadows of my new studio, wherever I stop next, it's waiting to guide my hand again. To paint, to document, to show me what comes next. Subscribe to Haunted Fears to hear more stories of art that creates itself and shadows that watch back. And to my Haunted Fears horror family, if you ever wake up with work you don't remember creating, maybe don't look too closely at what you made. Some art is a confession, some art is a warning, and some art is just the thing in the corner showing you exactly how close it's gotten.